Okay, welcome members of council and welcome members of the public to this council meeting for November 10th. I've got a number of administrative remarks before we begin the meeting. Now, first of all, I'd like to start off by saying, as part of our announcements, I'm going to be acknowledging the Remembrance Day ceremony being hosted tomorrow by the Royal Canadian Legion. So we'll get to that one. Announcement part up. First, I will read our public notice. Due to the efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to protect all individuals, city facilities will not be open to the public to attend council and committee meetings until further notice. The public can observe meetings of council and committees by viewing the live stream of the open session part of these meetings, which can be accessed on the city's website. Now, the public may submit written correspondence regarding agenda matters. Any person who wishes to speak to council on a matter just has to submit in writing their request to clerks@richmondhill.ca. Also, if you want to be an electronic delegation by video, on 12 p.m. the day before the meeting, you need to indicate to our clerk's office at clerks@richmondhill.ca. So with that, I'm going to call this meeting to order and ask members of council to rise for the playing of our national anthem. Okay. Thank you very much. So this will be the last meeting where I'm not beginning the meeting with a land acknowledgement, assuming we passed it on today's agenda, the bylaw that will put into place the direction and authorization for me to do so. And I look forward to all future council and committee meetings with a prepared statement regarding our efforts to move towards truth and reconciliation. Now, that will happen next time, but now we'll go straight into our public forum. Are there any members of the public who want to address council on any issues that's not on the agenda? Mr. Clerk, was anyone registered beforehand to speak? Okay. Okay, so we have no one for that, but we'll go to council announcement. Members of council, anyone have an announcement to make at this time? I don't see anyone. Okay, so I have an announcement to make. I'd like to acknowledge the Remembrance Day ceremony being hosted tomorrow by the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 375 at 11 a.m. Now, given our current circumstances, the Legion is keeping this to a small ceremony at the Cenotaph on Yonge Street with all the safety protocols in place. I want to thank Legion Branch 375 for hosting this ceremony. as they do each year, to honor the members of our Canadian Armed Forces, past and present. They have continued to be an extremely valuable partner with the city and an important contributor to our community. Last Friday, I hosted a small ceremony with two of our veterans from the Legion to provide thanks to Legion Branch 375 and their ongoing service to Richmond Hill. So Remembrance Day is about honoring our veterans and reflecting on all those who made the ultimate sacrifice in the name of democracy and in defense of our country. We cannot thank them enough, and we can never forget. While the event tomorrow is modified to ensure the safety of our veterans and the public, it is important that we recognize all those who have served. The flags will be lowered to half-mast at all Richmond Hill facilities. So please, wherever you are on November 11th at 11 a.m., I encourage everyone in Richmond Hill to pause and reflect on what this day means. Remember those who have laid down their lives for our community and our country in the First World War, Second World War, the Korean War, peacekeeping missions, and in Afghanistan. Give thanks for their service and give thanks for our freedom. They're always remembered and never forgotten. Okay. So with that, we move into the introduction of emergency time-sensitive matters. Does anyone on council have an item that's of an emergency or time-sensitive nature that they want to add to the agenda? Okay, I don't see any, and I have one myself. There's an item that I'd like to add with council support to the agenda, and it will be an in-camera item. Pertains to an identifiable individual, and for that reason, we won't be able to discuss it in the public portion of the meeting. We will have to discuss it on camera. Clerk is aware of the motion I'm bringing forward, and is there anything that officially we need to announce at this time? Move a motion to add that to the agenda. I see Councillor Silvas, you wanted to speak. One moment, we're going to hear from the clerk first. Go ahead.
Through you, Acting Mayor, we would need a mover and a seconder to add the item to the agenda.
Right. Okay, so I'll be looking for a member of council who's willing to move that for me. And Councillor Silvas, want to speak?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. Yeah, I'll move that. It's not a problem. I just wanted to mention, I did send a text to the city clerk, Stephen, but I see that Ryan is there. Your audio is breaking up, and it's like staccato static. And so we
my
can't
audio
hear
is.
you.
Okay,
Yeah.
Maybe my microphone. Is that better, Councillor Silvas?
That's much better. Thank you, sir.
I was too far from my microphone. Thanks very much for pointing that out.
You're welcome.
We certainly want the public watching online to be able to hear me. Thank you. So thanks for moving that motion. Can I have a seconder to add an in-camera item to the agenda? And all the details will be disclosed when we get into camera. Can somebody willing to second that so I don't have to leave the chair to do so? Thanks, Councillor West. Okay, so moved by Councillor Silvas, seconded by Councillor West, and an in-camera item be added to the agenda which pertains to an identifiable individual. So any discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor? Okay. I'll have to see those present. Okay, I have that as carrying 4-3. I can't see Councillor Munch. Okay. Councillor Munch, if you're not on video, we consider you absent.
Recorded vote, please.
Okay, the recorded vote's been requested, and that'll clear things up.
Through you, Acting Mayor, voting on the motion to add a time-sensitive closed session item to the agenda. Regional and local Councillor Pirelli.
No, thank you.
Acting Mayor DiPaolo.
Yes.
Councillor Munch.
Yes.
Councillor West.
Yes.
Councillor Chan.
Yes.
Councillor Silvas.
Yes.
Councillor Liu.
No.
Councillor Barrows.
No.
That motion carries on a 5-3. vote.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Clerk. So, okay, so that item will be added to the agenda. Now we need to adopt the agenda as amended. Is anyone willing to move the adoption of the agenda with that addition? Thank you, Councillor Silovitz. And Councillor Chan seconds that. Any discussion on the adoption of the agenda? I see none. So we move to the vote. All in favor of adopting the agenda as amended? Okay, that carries. Any opposed? Okay. Now, any members of council have a disclosure of pecuniary interest? If so, please state the general nature. I see none. So we move forward to the adoption of our previous council minutes. We can take them all at once. We have a council public meeting on October 20th, a council meeting on October 27th, council public meeting on October 28th, and a special council meeting that we held on October 29th. All of those minutes are in our package. Is someone willing to move the adoption of those previous council minutes? Thank you, Councillor West. Is there a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Liu. Any discussion? All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay, now it's time to identify items for separate discussion. Councillor Chan and then Councillor Barrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to pull item number 13.3 on the sole source acquisition of the CAT AVL supplier for the city's freight. And I also like to pull item 13.4 regarding Richmond Hill 150 celebrations. Thank you.
Very good. Okay. Okay, Councillor, we'll remove 13.3 and 13.4. Councillor Barrows.
I would like to speak to 13.6 and introduce 13.9.
Okay. We only got 13.5 and 13.7 left. Anyone want to speak to those two items? 13, we'll be discussing every item except for 13.5 and 13.7. Okay, so can I have a mover for this to adopt the staff recommendations in items 13.5 and 13.7? Thank you, Councillor Silovitz. I need a seconder. Thank you, Councillor West. For those two items and the bylaws, Mr. Clerk? We'll do that at the end. So yeah, the staff recommendations in 13.5 and 13.7. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, any opposed? That carries. Okay, so we don't have any public hearings today. We move to presentations. And the first is actually very exciting. It's a presentation that I'm going to be making. Today, we're presenting the William F. Bell Young Entrepreneur Award. So Mayor Bell served Richmond Hill for 26 years, including 6 terms as mayor. Each year with this award, we honor his legacy. Joining us to help present the award today are Mayor Bell's wife, Jackie Bell, his daughter, Julie. I see Julie there, and Jackie and his brother, John, in the background. Welcome.
Hi, good
Welcome
morning.
to the council meeting. So glad you're here with us today, and we're really glad to be continuing to honor the legacy of William Bell, who served the city so well, and I was able to serve with him for 9 years, and just did great things for Richmond Hill. You know, in 2006, the city introduced the William F. Bell Young Entrepreneur Award to recognize successful young entrepreneurs taking part in the Ontario Summer Company program. The Richmond Hill Summer Company program began in 2004, and since then, more than 160 young entrepreneurs have successfully launched a summer business with help from the Richmond Hill Small Business Enterprise Center. Okay, so I now invite Julie to tell us about this year's recipient. Go ahead, Julie.
Hi, good morning. I have an announcement to make before I get into this. Today is my dad's birthday. He would have been 83, so happy birthday.
Oh.
and a nice day to give this award out. So thank you very much, Acting Mayor DiPaolo, and thank you for council or to council for having us here today. On behalf of John and my mom, Jackie, we're really, really pleased that this is still happening and that we can be here to award this today. This year's winner is a dedicated and talented student who created an online pet store called Charmy Box. Charmy Box provides pet owners with natural and nutritional pet food, carefully selected for their pet breed. Through dedication and hard work, Charmy Box earned more than $50,000 in revenue this past summer. I'm pleased to announce this year's William F. Bell Young Entrepreneur Award to Zach Sheng, owner of Charmy Box. Congratulations, Zach.
Well, congratulations, Zach. And Zach's idea for his business, along with his hard work this summer, has really paid off. We wish him continued success, and maybe someday he'll be a summer company mentor to another young entrepreneur. On behalf of the Bell family, members of council, and the Richmond Hill Small Business Enterprise Center, I would like to congratulate Zach on all the success he has achieved. So if you could, you have the award that you could show us, Zach. Have you been given the award?
Yeah. Hold it up.
Can you hold it up so everyone can see? That's great. Hold it right in front of. Hold it right in front of you, Zach. Right in front of you. That.
Yeah.
And there you go. There we go. We can see that. Congratulations, young man. It's quite an honor, and all the best with your company going forward.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Bill family. I really appreciate this award.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you
Good job.
for your hard work.
Okay.
Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Congratulations, Jackie, John, and it was great to see you again. Thanks, Julie.
All of you.
Thank you. Whoop. Nice to see you all. Thanks very much.
Take care. All the best.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. The next presentation, I'm sorry, is a presentation by Brian Burbidge, our fire chief. Mr. Burbidge, are you here? It's regarding the City of Richmond Hill Fire Master Plan, and it references item 13.2. Mr. Burbidge, go ahead. Your first official address to council in your role as our full-time fire chief.
Thank you, Acting Mayor, and through you, good morning, Acting Mayor and members of council. As your newly appointed fire chief, it's my honor and pleasure to be here today in front of you to unveil our now complete 2021 Fire Services Master Plan. I'd like to also take this opportunity to thank council for their support and confidence and placing me in to lead our fire service and become the city's 8th fire chief in our over 100 years of history. It's an honor and a privilege to serve you. It's an honor and a privilege to serve our residents, and it's an honor and a privilege to serve with all of our dedicated staff here in Richmond Hill Fire and Emergency Services. Today, I'm joined with Daryl Cully and Rick Monkman, who are from the Emergency Management and Training Incorporated, the consultants that were retained to conduct our Fire Services Master Plan. This plan itself is months of analysis of statistical information, community planning and community risk information, building and equipment audits, and stakeholder feedback. As a result of the now completed review, the study itself contains 45 recommendations that will assist in our future planning and directions of our fire service. Daryl and Rick will now combine to do a high-level presentation of some of the key findings from the master plan. We won't go through all 45. And they will be available after the presentation to answer any questions related to the master fire plan, and I will be available to answer any questions related to our fire service as it currently sits. With that, I would like to introduce both Daryl Cully and Rick Monkman to lead us through the presentation.
Good morning, and thank you, Chief. Thank you, Acting Mayor and Council for this opportunity. I'm Daryl, and with me is Rick Monkman, representing also
what happens in the fire service is each municipality has their own. There's not an amalgamation.
Councillor Munch, mute your microphone.
Sorry.
Okay. We have quite a number of slides. I'm going to go through them very quickly for time. Again, as the chief had mentioned, we had actually started with 46 recommendations. He's already been working on them. We've reduced them to 45, and many of those the chief has already started to address. Keep in mind, the next slide, please. The master fire plan is a look at where we are. How do we best serve the community, and then how do we get there? It's a 10-year strategic plan. So when you look at the number of recommendations, that is not in any way a critique. What it is it's a guidance over the next 10 years. So the recommendations are spread over a period of time. Next slide, please. Along with the master fire plan, which is over 200 pages long, we also have a community risk assessment. The community risk assessment is confidential because it includes a lot of critical infrastructure risks. And of course, we don't want that necessarily to be public. But it's a new provincial requirement from the Office of the Fire Marshal. And what it does is it takes an in-depth look at the risks in the community and what options are there to reduce those risks, and how it puts together options for the fire chief and the community in order to mitigate or prevent some of those risks. Next slide, please. When we're developing the master fire plan, there's quite a number of performance standards we look at. Next slide, please. And we're just sharing a few of these here to show you that, we take a look at everything from NFPA standards to health and safety standards, and fire marshal's guidance notes and that sort of thing. So when it comes down to the recommendations, they're based on practices, standards that are internationally recognized or specific for Ontario in some cases. Next slide, please. When we take a look at the fire service, it's really built on 3 lines of defense. And these 3 lines of defense come from the Fire Marshal's office. And the first one is we need to place priority on public fire safety education. And that is ensuring people take ownership and recognize how that they can be involved in reducing their own risks. So we want to start that education, and it starts, Richmond Hill Fire starts very early in the public school sector, educating our community. The second component of that is code enforcement. So it's inspecting buildings, it's inspecting plans, it's ensuring that standards in both new construction and your current building stock are enforced. And then if those fail, if all else fails, then the emergency response capability, the ability for the fire service to respond to the emergency itself. And these form, a strong multi-tiered protection for the community. Next slide, please. So there's a number of focuses that we undertook in doing the master fire plan, the community risk assessment. We looked at every division within the fire department, the administration, fire prevention, training, communications, all the way through to suppression. So we took a look at every aspect of the fire department. And I'm just going to add here, you have got a very highly effective, well-led organization, but it's also very lean. And we'll get into that in the next few slides. And so we also took a look at, where your stations were, the staffing, the equipment that you have. Next slide, please. And we looked at the future because this is a 10-year plan. So, we spoke to many people in the planning department. There's a number of documents referenced within the master fire plan from the city with regards to your 10-year growth plan. And we have made recommendations over that 10 years in order to keep the fire service current with the rapid growth of the community. We looked at other things such as working with your neighbors, industry standards, and in the recommendations, we discussed some of the financial implications and timetables, time recommendations. Next slide, please. Right. So we started with 46 recommendations. We're already down to 45, spread over 10 years. Many of the recommendations are operational. In other words, the chief can address those directly. And there are things, that are ongoing, might be with, for example, the way a public education program is being rolled out, that sort of thing, and being able to move the fire service into the future. You've got a fire chief now that has really been on top of things, from his time as a deputy right into now as the chief. He's been taking these recommendations and moving forward to them. We're going to be talking about some of the key high-level recommendations as opposed to going through all 45 of them. And what we've done is we've put them in the order of when we think they should be addressed, the timetable. Now, keep in mind, some of these timetables are based on growth of the community. As the community grows, if that growth speeds up, some of those recommendations may need to be sped up. If the growth starts to level out, so it needs to be monitored throughout the 10 years. It's a living document, and so as we talk about some of the key recommendations, we'll be putting some timelines to them. So next slide. So initially we're going to talk about those that are in the immediate timeline. Overall, there's 9 recommendations in this timeline, but we're only going to discuss a few of them. Next slide, please. So one of the very first is the fire service should work with the city's facility service to look at the space requirements and the options of creating a headquarters that brings a lot of these divisions into the same location, right? Administration, prevention, training, communications, mechanical. CEMC is your Community Emergency Management Coordinator. So looking at the space requirements and the opportunities to create really a more efficient organization by having all of these divisions and all of these people together, so that they can work more closely together. Now in the recommendations, you will see on the bottom the number. So if you're referencing the document itself, it is recommendation 39. But the timeline for that is looking at starting that process to evaluate the needs right away. Next. Next slide, please. Oh, sorry. Go back one. I didn't realize it had changed. Thank you. One of the recommendations is that the fire service maintain a minimum of 4 firefighters on every apparatus on each shift. And what's happening now is sometimes if there's sick time or other vacancies, sometimes those numbers are less than 4. And really we want to take a look at best practices, getting adequate number of firefighters on the scene as quickly as we can, and meeting some of the best practices. Next slide. So the next recommendations are what we see over the next 1 to 3 years. Next, please. The city is growing. The city has seen significant growth. You've already started both the planning and the development in the northeast quadrant of the city, and the fire service needs to be able to address that. And so what we're recommending is that the fire service and the city start taking a look at what land is available for a fire station up in that quadrant, and that should start within the next year. Next, please. Fire sprinklers save lives. There's no doubt about it. The science and the experience in communities that have fire sprinklers demonstrate that. And one of the areas where we do not have fire sprinklers is in residential new builds. It's not in the building code, and so therefore it cannot be mandated by a community, but we really recommend working with developers. And I understand the chief and fire prevention department has already started this and had some really good discussion. So that developers, as they're building new subdivisions, can offer it as an option to their buyers, and really create an additional level of fire safety in those homes. Next. This is regarding the deployment of instructors, so that we take people with specialized skill sets and we assign them, move them through to the training department on assignment so that they can address some of the high risk and specialty needs of the fire service. Next. The communication center is the core of every emergency. Every call that comes in starts at the communication center. And so we're recommending that you take a look at hiring part-time or full-time staff to cover those options when dispatchers or communications operators have vacancies, so that we maintain two communications operators and one supervisor on duty at all times. What happens now is sometimes firefighters are pulled off their trucks in order to back up staffing in the communications room. And what we really need are those highly trained, specifically trained communications operators in those roles. Next, please. You have a communications center. As we see changes happening, many smaller fire departments are moving away from having their own communication centers, and there's an opportunity here to look at bringing in some revenue to your communication center by offering those services, going out and aggressively advertising or letting other services know that you're available to take on their communications work, or to respond to requests for proposals that many communities put out for their fire dispatch services. Next. When I mentioned earlier that your fire service is lean, it is lean. You have, off the top of my head, I think it's 168 staff. You've got 3 non-union managers currently overseeing that large group. Communications is a specialty amongst itself, and we're recommending that you have a chief officer, someone outside the bargaining unit, manage that communications division, and as opposed to one of your current deputy chiefs having it added on to all the other tasks that they're currently doing. Next, please. Vehicle maintenance. Your fleet is grown to a size that needs to be properly maintained. An EVT is an emergency vehicle technician. It's someone who specializes, has received special training in a mechanic in maintaining fire apparatus. And in order to keep up with the preventative maintenance programs and some of the repairs on the vehicles, we're recommending that you hire an additional EVT to help keep that fleet available. Keep vehicles out of that service line and keep them on the road. Next slide, please. Along with that, having a service vehicle that they can go to various stations or respond to any incident where a fire apparatus may need some assistance. Next. This recommendation, so we're recommending this now, but the process has already started. So we're recommending that you hire an additional 20 firefighters to be deployed on an additional fire engine. So that covers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, staffing by having 20 firefighters deployed to an engine. You've already hired 4 of those. You've already been in this process. And in the 2022 operational budget, there is already the proposal to hire the balance of the 16. You need that engine, the fire engine now. And so what we're recommending is that the city move on with the steps that it's already started to take in this regard. Next, please. We talked about the communications division, and calls come from the 911 center to the communications, but sometimes they come from your allied agencies. So the Ministry of Health controls the Central Ambulance Communications Center. And they started a program several years ago with certain fire dispatch centers where when the call was coming into the Ambulance Communications Center, as they typed the information into their computer, it would automatically be sent to the fire dispatch center.
So you have 1 minute remaining, Mr. Cully, with the presentation. Thanks.
Okay. So we're recommending that we take a look at simultaneous dispatch there. Next, please. Have the city facility services complete a building condition and needs assessment. Some of your stations are aging and need to have some upgrades, so they need to be reviewed. Next slide, please. You need an apparatus to fill a number of functions here. A command center, air, light, decontamination, and rehab apparatus. Decontamination and rehab is really a health and safety issue now with firefighters. Next slide, please. Okay, midterm recommendations. Next. We recommended looking at land for the Northeast. So, as the construction continues, it's going to be time to build a station up in the Northeast and to staff it. So when you build the station, you also need to add the staffing for that. Next. And when that occurs, level of control, having adequate management in place to create a district chief position within the service at that time. Next, please. Okay, go ahead, next. And then again, as we look, into the future, at the rate the city is growing, it's going to need more staffing. And so, this is here to monitor the growth of the city and to take a look at, you've got growth happening in the core. Yonge Street is growing higher. So you've got intensification as well as spreading out into new communities. And next slide, please. Go to the next one. It's important to maintain a goal of your response, and as the city grows, to monitor that and to monitor your capabilities. And one more slide, please. This slide really shows where the staffing of Richmond Hill is in comparison to fire services that are of similar size, career departments serving similar types of communities. And we try to target somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 firefighter per 1,000 population. As you'll see, a lot of the fire services are in that area: Pickering, Central York, Whitby, Barrie. Some of them are higher, Cambridge and Waterloo. But then we get into those that are on that lower end. So Richmond Hill is about 0.72 per 1,000 at this point. So it's very lean for the community that it is serving. So I believe I've used up all of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Cully. I think, is that your last slide? So that's
Yes, it is.
including your presentation? Okay, thank you very much. All valuable information. I don't want to cut you short. But now Mr. Burbidge, is there another presenter that you had scheduled to talk about emergency management and training?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No, it was just Rick and Daryl were here on behalf of the Emergency Management and Training Incorporated, and they are available, as am I now, to answer any questions. That is the conclusion of the presentation, but we are available for any information or questions needed.
That's great. Okay, thanks, Chief Burbidge. And thank you, Mr. Cully, for that detailed presentation. We understand this is very important to assess our needs going forward and to understand our requirements for fire services in Richmond Hill. So I'm going to bring it back to council with that for questions of the presenter. And I'll start with Councillor Chan and then Councillor West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Fire Chief. As the acting mayor said, first time we have you officially with us, and thank you for the consultant for the study. Fire services, as is certainly an issue about public safety. The community risk assessment, I like that. This is a really fundamental part. We always take pride that Richmond Hill is a nice place to live and work and raise a family. So we also need to think about in terms of the potential risk level. Now, it's a number of 45 recommendations, a lot, but I do understand over 10 years. And specifically, I want to thank all the firefighters in working all these years with the suppression, training, and particularly on education aspects. So I appreciate that. Now, one of the things is that particularly on the number of firefighters, and I did take note that report both in the staff report and the fire study is also saying that need the additional 20 and also 16 will be more. Now, it may not be particular in the presentation, but in the staff report, and I'll be curious to hear from the chief that through you, Mr. Chair, that how is it going to be operationalized with adding additional 16 firefighters that I support in principle. However, is really try to see within the physical constraint we have, how it could be done and what's the plan, because I'm presently happy to read on page 3 of the staff report that the additional 16 firefighters can be added or higher without any particular impact on the direction of council to have 0% tax impact. So through you, Mr. Chair, I'd like to hear from Fire Chief how we can achieve that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Councillor Chan. I guess the phased in approach is a development by our finance and mid team. If I could possibly, I don't know if David Dexter is on the line now, that he might be able to speak to that.
I'm sure our treasurer's with us. Mr. Dexter, can you weigh in? Someone from your department? Go ahead, Mr. Dexter.
I'm sorry about that. I had a problem getting my thing going there. Yeah, we're proposing to members of council a 5-year phased-in approach for the 16 firefighters to use one of the reserves, the Community Enhancement Economic Vitality Reserve, to phase in over 5 years the full cost. The first year of the cost being impacting the 2023 operating budget.
Okay, thank you. I'm sure that we will see more of that during the deliberation on the operating budget. Thank you. But it's good to hear that we have a plan to really hire the 25 fighters who were commanded 5 years ago. So I'm glad with that. And moving on to committed risk. Quite often, in particular Ward 6, where I represent for the last 15 years, there is a number of high rises. And residents always have asked a question, are our fire services ready? Meaning in terms of, God forbid, there's any fire broke out in the higher level of a building, whether it's 20-story, whatever the case might be. And so I like to get some words of comfort or assurances through you, Mr. Chair, from our either fire services staff chief or through the consultants. To what extent is the Richmond Hill Fire Emergency Services ready for any kind of, nobody wants it, but should it happen, fire they might broke out in a higher story in a building. For you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Councillor Chan again. My comfort level is there. We are ready to respond to high-rise buildings as it currently sits. However, we all know that there are more and more buildings being brought in or being developed into the city. And as it is right now with our current population, I feel comfortable. But as our population increases, so does our risk. So hence the reason for our master plan in front of you today. And again, with the recommendations to increase as the size of the city increases as well.
Okay, thank you. And the consultant mentioned about recommendation 39. Now, which is talking about to examine consolidation of one kind of fire services operation administration center. Now, we so far hired additional staff. I got the answers from both the fire chief and the treasurer. Is that maybe this is either directing to the consultants from the chair? Is there any thought or consideration consultant might suggest? After all, they have studied everything, all the division within the fire emergency service. Any suggestion through you, Mr. Chair, to a consultant on recommendation number 39?
Mr. Colley?
Well, through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Councillor. When you have your staff spread out and you have to move people around in order to have, a good working relationship, it takes time. It creates inefficiencies. Bringing people together into a single facility would certainly improve the efficiencies of the fire service, as well as having better oversight as to what's happening when things are closer, more directly in front of you.
Okay. Thank you for the response. I can understand the certain demerits for doing that. I'm just looking at the timing is immediate, less than 1 year or within a year. And it seems to me that it will be capital and operational kind of ramification. And to the extent that we've tried to make it happen within a year, I would really want to wait and see what the staff may come back on that. And I recognize the merits of it, but I'm just wondering about the potential delivery within a year, given that all this ramification. Those are my comments, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. And I just want to say the last words, so to speak. I really like to that the presentation and the fire services master plan talking about pursuing community partnership opportunities. Partnership, I think it's important. I think one of the words I hear from the consultant is that, you know, everyone has to take ownership, that this is safety, like planning, escape plan, things of that nature. It's not just the firefighters who are in uniform. So thank you for that and keep up the good work. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for me to ask those questions.
Okay, thank you, Councillor
Happy to
Chen.
move the receipt of the report with thanks.
Okay. So we've got a motion for receipt. I hope Councillor West, maybe you can second that. You're next to speak. I've got Councillor West, Councillor Silovitz, Councillor Barros, and I thought maybe Councillor Munch. We'll find out. Go ahead, Councillor West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to everybody. Thank you, Chief Burbidge. I did have the opportunity to read the report. It's lengthy, and I did also have the opportunity to chat with Chief Burbidge before this, and so I think I'm fairly clear on the details of this. I think also, if I'm not mistaken, I also had the opportunity a while ago when we first started this process to speak to some of the consulting team to give them their thoughts. So I appreciate that as well. Thank you. So this is really important, in my opinion. There's lots and lots of services that municipalities offer our residents. And I must admit, I hope most people would not ever have to have an encounter with a fire truck at their house or in their car or whatever. And we all hope that. But the reality is that when the time comes that there is an emergency and somebody calls the fire department, it is really important that we offer them the very best that we can. And I think that this is what this is all about. And it's what the Richmond Hill Fire Emergency Service has been about since I was aware of them. And that is the mission. So I do appreciate the comment that the fire service right now that we're offering is very lean. And I've heard that in the past as well. And I think the statistics that you showed at the end bear that out. I do also recognize the fact that this master plan is actually very similar in a lot of ways to the old master plan, at least in the thrust. I mean, maybe some of the details are different. But, the reality is, as we grow as a community, we are going to need to grow as a fire service because we need to keep up with that growth and be able to provide that service when it's really important and necessary. I do appreciate the fact that the plan does speak to efficiency. Fire service, let's be honest, is a very expensive thing that municipalities do. It's definitely probably across the province, one of the more expensive things that urbanized municipalities have, but it's absolutely necessary. So I think it's really important that we be efficient and as lean as we can reasonably be. But I also like the approach that some of the shorter term recommendations are suggesting. Like hiring 16 firefighters is a lot. And I'm totally understand the need, and I'm totally on board with that. But to be able to use the strategy that we're talking about to mitigate the cost of that on the tax rate and kind of spread it out over time, I think is a good approach. And I think, it's a good use of leveraging a reserve fund to, not have a jolt in the tax rate in order to do what we need to do. So I appreciate that. And I guess the final thing that I wanted to say, I'm not going to get into the detail of this because it's all laid out in the staff report, and we heard a lot of the recommendations in the presentation. But the final thing I wanted to mention is that I think it is really important that we will be looking at this plan as we grow and keeping up with the demand. And I think that's a very, very, very important commitment that the plan has to the citizens of Richmond Hill. I believe I'm certainly going to support this. I know it comes with a price tag, and I get that, but I think it's really important that it be done. But I also think that it is a commitment that the plan has that says that we're not going to be doing things in a timing way that are inappropriate, or that we would be doing things in a way that would inflate the cost of this to the taxpayer based on the obvious benefit that we have for them as well. So I think it's important that we continue to monitor this. And I think that if we do that, and we've done the work on the plan, I think this will serve us well into the future. So I thank you for that.
1 minute.
And I will leave it at that. Thank you very much. Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Director Dexter, if you can mute your microphone. Okay. Thank you, Councillor West, for that. Councillor Silovitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you to the presenters and for the presentation. And Chief Burbidge, congratulations, face to face. Wonderful to have you as our chief. I want to applaud and commend RHFES for all their remarkable work, but especially for all the work that they have undertaken together with our emergency management team, keeping Richmond Hill safe during the pandemic. We're coming on to 2 years now, and the work of RHFES and our emergency management team, which includes some of RHFES as well, has been remarkable, and it deserves note. And I'm sure it's going to have to continue for probably at least another year. And our staff and your staff have done a superb job for Richmond Hill. And I, for one, want to personally thank you for that. You've kept us all safe through this pandemic. On a very personal note, with your indulgence, Mr. Chair, I want to thank Richmond Hill Fire and Emergency Services and York Region paramedics. And Chief Burbidge, I would imagine that records are kept for all 911 and ambulance calls that are made into the 911 system. If you could please find out which 911 operator, a woman, answered my frantic call around 3:15 a.m. on Saturday, May the 1st, and kept me calm and focused until the paramedics arrived at our condo within minutes of my call, and the 3 paramedics who arrived at our door. I know it was one woman and 2 men, but I have no idea who they were, as all I could see were their eyes and hear their voices. They were absolutely phenomenal. And they were the first cog in a wheel to save my husband and life partner, Derek's life, after I found him unresponsive and barely breathing as a result of critical COVID-19 pneumonia. It would mean the world to Derek and I if those 4 remarkable human beings know how much we appreciate and admire their dedicated work. We owe them and all the medical teams from 3 hospitals across the GTHA over 4.5 months a debt of gratitude that can never be adequately voiced. For all their work, for yours as our chief, and to all the members of Richmond Hill Fire and Emergency Services and York paramedics, from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. Thank you for everything that you do on a daily basis. We know you're there, and we know that we can depend on you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Silovitz. I know that you and many of our other residents are grateful for the services that are offered by Chief Burbidge and the fire services. So next speaker is Councillor Barrows.
I want to begin by saying that while my remarks may not appear to be favorable, it is in no way meant to be disparaging of the men and women of the Richmond Hill Fire and Emergency Service. They are outstanding individuals. They are doing a fine job, but my job today is to look at the report that's in front of me. And I don't want in any way it to be misunderstood. when I look at the report, I'm not shown, and this is my first question to the chief, I'm not clear if there is an estimate in there somewhere as to this report. I couldn't seem to put my finger on it. Could you help me with that?
Chief?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Councillor Barros, just so I'm clear, are you meaning for all 45 recommendations is the costing of that?
Correct. I'm looking at what is the full cost out of this and the potential tax implications to that.
I can't speak to the total cost or total tax implications. However, I can point you to the area in the master fire plan that talks about the timelines as well as financial implications as they are in 2021 dollars. So bear with me for 1 second. If Daryl or Rick may have that page reference handy, that might be faster.
Your worship and members of council, it's on page 236. It gives the recommendations, the estimated costs and suggested timelines, and it's a summation of all of our recommendations. And we did not total up all the costs because it's based on timelines as to when you should be considering them and implementing them.
So 236, is that the PDF page or is that the printed page?
Okay, I'll put it this way, section 12.
Section 12.
Yes.
Okay, and is there a table?
Yes.
So recommended and
the next page.
Estimated costs. Estimated costs are just staff time, so there's no number there. Staff time, staff time, staff time. 120,000 per training officer, staff time, staff time. So has anyone figured out what the staff times are going to be? Like, I'm looking for numbers. I'm looking for dollar values. When you say staff time, these are already staff that we've hired and they're just going to be deployed to do something different?
Mr. Chair and members of council, what that is individuals that are already hired and working for Richmond Hill. And this would be assignment that would be part of their job requirement to work on some of these projects. So additional costs would be operational, which the chief may have already within his budget, but incurring overtime may be also within his budget. But staff time is for staff that already exist within the fire service, and it would be one of their assigned tasks to look after.
And I'm sure you've done the math. Please don't make me have to do it right now. What's the final total if this plan was implemented in 2021 dollars, which I recognize will balloon as we move forward?
I think, Councillor, there will be a submission coming to budget for this year, and all the total costing will be there. So we will understand and appreciate what the 2022 requests are as a result of this fire services master plan. It's not typical that any of our master plans with a 10-year vision are going to add up in the total cost implications, but it's a framework to measure against when we do our budgeting.
So through you to the chief. Chief, you've got a master plan in front of us. No doubt there must be a dollar figure to it. Do you know what that dollar figure is?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, to Councillor Barros, I don't have a total dollar figure for the entire plan. We are going to be, as recommendations come forward to council to be implemented or to suggest their implementation at that time, the appropriate costing for the time frame that we're in would be presented with that. I think with the consultant report that is in front of us, it does suggest the numbers, and as was mentioned previously, the fire service is a large financial burden on municipalities. We understand that, and we will work to keep everything as efficient as we can, keeping in mind our financial restraints. So as far as the complete package, I could add that up for you and have that for you at a different time, but for right now, I don't have that number. I apologize.
Mr. Chair and members of council, if I might add to the chief's comments, one of the recommendations, number 39, was to review the opportunity of combining all your different divisions into one location. made a comment that present facilities could also be liquidated to help offset some of the costs. So if you've got 2 or 3 buildings that you no longer require because staff are being amalgamated into one location, that real estate could be sold and those funds put towards the costing of a new building. So in total of the entire recommendation would be an upset limit, which could vary depending on the number of recommendations that are implemented, but also the sale of present facilities.
Thank you. Councillor Barrows?
So then, through the chair to the chief. So you don't know what the total dollar value is, but you've got a report here suggesting we do all this work. Is it just a, hey, this would be nice if we could do all this work? Let's see what it costs in the future. See, I've been on council now for some time, and I see when sometimes master plans get approved, and then it gets used against the council later, saying, well, this is what you decided to do. Don't now tell us it's too expensive. You decided this was your plan. Now execute your plan. I realize it's a lot of money, but you decided this. I'm trying to take a step back and say, how much is this really going to cost long term? And I'm not hearing a number right now. Is this $1 billion over the final report? Is it $500 million? Does anyone on the consulting team have anything to help with? Because it seems like you wrote the report, you made the presentation through the chair.
Well, Councillor, I don't know how you're going to expect a different answer to the same question. These are the requirements going forward. It's a master plan. It's a future document. And
well, I'd expect with all due respect, I'd expect the consulting team to try to answer that, not yourself.
Okay.
You didn't write the report, sir.
I'm going to let Mr. Cully answer, but you can't continually ask the same question. Mr. Cully?
Yes.
And then Commissioner Jocelyn has her hand up next. Go ahead, Mr. Cully.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. There's so many variables here, and it, if you implement something on year 3 versus year 5, that's going to have a difference in the cost over the full 10 years, for example. There's a difference between operational costs and capital costs. The design of a fire station, it depends on so many different factors on types of construction. We can put some estimates towards each of the recommendations, and the vast majority of recommendations do not have a cost attached, because they are things that can be done. And again, that the chief has been doing many of them already. Those ones regarding staffing and construction will all depend on the dates and times that they're actually implemented and carried through. So for example, the addition of 20 firefighters where you've already hired 4, that was a recommendation that was 5 years ago, but hasn't been realized yet. It's being put out there again, and so it's going to depend on how council moves forward with it as far as the the staffing costs, for example.
If I may, Mr. Chair, regarding estimates for costing, for a new headquarters, you could, depending on the features and the size of which is required, which is, you want a headquarters station to be able to be in service at least 30 to 40 years. So you need to make it of such size that you can allow for expansion and additional growth of resources. So in 2021 dollars, I am estimating between 17 and 21 million dollars to build a new headquarters that would have facilities to look after the needs now, but also into the future. A new station in 2021 dollars you're probably looking anywhere from $4 to $7 million. A new aerial truck is $1.5 million at today's value. A new pumper, or an engine, I should say, is approximately $1 million when it's fully outfitted. So depending on when you decide or accept the recommendation of the chief will also dictate the cost in those dollars that day. And as you know, building costs are going up exponentially, especially since COVID, due to lack of building supplies, the cost of steel, etc. That will also present some problems, I guess, in estimating a true calculation of what it's going to cost in today's dollars, if that is of some assistance.
Okay, and Councillor Barrows, just give me a moment. I'm going to also ask Commissioner Jocelyn, you had your hand up on this question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in response to Councillor Barrows' inquiries, what we're asking for today is that this report be received, and staff will be dissecting it and analyzing the recommendations that are contained within it, and then we'll be coming back to council where there are impacts in terms of any resources, whether they be staffing or financial resources, facility development, repair, through those proper council processes, be it capital budget, be it operating budget. So we need that opportunity to go through that. So as of right now, the consultants are recommending the optimum would be for a new building with fire headquarters in it, but are there alternatives that we as staff can look at from an efficiencies perspective with our inventory today? So so we need that opportunity to go through that. In terms of the 16 staff and the financial implications from that, this is something we have been working with council on for the last couple of years out of the 2016 report, and we do have a recommendation coming forward to council in the 2022 budget process. So it's like the recreation facilities master plans and the parks plan. They make overall arching recommendations to us, and then we as staff take that and do our due diligence to review each of those recommendations to determine how we can fit it in, what alternatives there might be. You know, we take a wholesome look at it across the corporation. So I hope that helps a little bit.
Thanks, Ms. Jocelyn. Go ahead, Councillor Barrows.
Thank you. Yes, I understand that this report in front of us today is for information only. It does not set any wheels in motion. I'm seeing Commissioner Jocelyn shaking her head in agreements with that.
Commissioner Jocelyn.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Barrows. There are some recommendations in the 45 recommendations. There's some operational recommendations that won't have any impact, like in the weeds, in terms of efficiencies within our organization, some revenue generation, opportunities that we could be looking at. So we will be putting some of those into motion where we can from an efficiencies perspective, but anything that's going to have cost implications on the corporation will be addressed through council in the proper process, be it a council meeting, be it operating and or capital budget processes. So we will definitely come forward through the proper process on that by reports by Chief Burbidge.
And I understand that also, that the chief at his sole discretion can move things around. And I would expect nothing but those types of changes that Commissioner Jocelyn spoke of. I guess what I'm getting at is the recommendation be that the master fire plan be received, not be approved, that it be received. I just want to be clear on that so that the members of the public that are looking at this and are looking at council's commitment to maintain a fiscal responsible house are not thinking that we are just at this quick time with a brief 20-minute presentation making multi-million-dollar decisions without actually even seeing the business cases for them. So I look forward to that as we move forward. I also look forward to some more intense conversation with the chief on some of the day-to-day operations that affect each of our wards, so that we can then become more informed as to what is going on the ground in a more detailed situation. My last question, what is the current percentage of every tax dollar operationally going towards fire service? And what is the potential change in that? Do we have an idea?
Okay, just got that question under the wire, Councillor Barros. Your time's up. Chief Burbidge, can you answer that? Our costs on a per capita basis?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, I don't have the actual percentage for the tax dollar. I could perhaps speak to the treasurer just to find out that exact information.
But I think that calculation can be made. We can get back to the councillor with an answer. Director Dexter?
To you, Mr. Acting Mayor, I don't have that in my hand. I'm searching around for it. It is around. I can provide it by email to all of council after this meeting, or when I find it, if that's preferred.
My last recollection was around 26%. Is that still around the accurate mark? Every dollar a taxpayer pays, 26% goes to fire service?
I believe that of the total operating expenditure budget, 15% is related to fire and emergency services. That's the number I'm just looking at right now, but I want to be sure that it has all things included before I give a conclusive answer.
Okay. Yeah, well, so we'll let.
If we can get that
Director
maybe
Dexter,
at the end of the meeting, that would be great while we're still in the public realm. I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the ability to have the treasurer report back before the end
I'm
of
sure
the
our
meeting.
treasurer
Thank
will
you.
be scrambling to get that breakdown.
Yes. I'll get back to
What
you.
percentage fire services constitutes in our operating budget? They'll get back to us with that. Okay, thank you, Councillor Barros. Now the next speaker is Councillor Munch, and then Regional and Local Councillor Pirelli.
Good day, everybody. Good to see you. As many of you know, I am in Ottawa, so sorry I'm a bit remote from most of you. Excellent report. The fire service is the #1 area of what we have in our budget, and it's important. I'm glad to see it, Chief, frankly. The efficiencies and performance is really well done. As was stated in our budget, how we had to make some tough choices, and I applaud Councillor Barros for asking some tough questions. I have, like Councillor West said, been involved, as many of you know, in a direct fire, and I lost most of everything I owned. So I know what it's like, and I'm empathetic from an actual situation side. This 10-year amalgamated plan is a good plan, but it also raises focus as to why we really need to govern. And I think in some ways, the fire services has been taking the brunt of us not addressing some of these concerns. And I've moved motions in the past that have been really tough motions. And we're going to have discussions going forward. But our fire service does need support. The efficiency is really well. More needs to be done, but they've done a good job. I've seen some fires this year. We've received reports how much effort our fire services take on every fire. And I applaud the reports that have come forward. Really a sizable difference in communication. Again, Mr. Fire Chief doing a really great job in your short tenure as Fire Chief, and you should get applauded for that. Great report. Took me a long time to read it twice. Wrote a lot of information. It's interesting. I keep applying the fire service because I've received more information about our planning department from our fire service than I have from our planning department in terms of numbers. I think the courage for you to do that speaks and earns you respect. I want to thank you for the clarity of the challenges and the meeting of our growth targets. One flaw in the report is that we are growing at a substantially lower rate today than we were 10, 15, and 20 years ago and 30 years ago. If you look at the growth of Richmond Hill in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s versus the growth today, not there. That's not your fault. just that we are growing just at a massively declining rate. We're growing at 38%, where the region's growing at 68%. Just to give you a number, over the next 20 years, and seeing we're going through a 10-year plan, we are growing at a lagging rate, and we are underperforming, and that affects the fire service. And now that we're going into a new element, our planning consultants come forward and say, we're going to likely see a certain kind of design in our community. But that fire service has to keep in touch with that. And that is really difficult for them. And it's not fair for us to not address it. And I'm going to go into some of the concerns I have. 16 to 17 firefighters in 8 minutes. Great. I'm glad that the province and others are keeping our hand to the fire on that. We have a challenge on growth and on the type of growth. Specifically, I would like to know if we get approvals, that doesn't necessarily directly impact the fire service. What really in them is the move-in date and the type to make sure that they've got the means to tackle that fire. And I would like to know, how does the fire service know when move-in dates are? Does anybody know?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, maybe I can seek further clarification, but try to answer it as well. So are you, Councillor Munch, are you looking for thresholds where staff are then implemented?
Yeah, or not just staff. I'm talking about, for example, if we have the numbers of 19,300 new people in Leslie North, 5,400 in Bethesda, we have an intensification plan. When those people actually go into those dwellings, at that point, we have a higher threshold of potential fire concerns, as opposed to getting an approval rate where there's no unit being built and people being there. So I'm asking, is there a time when the fire service knows that those places are being occupied?
Chief?
Through you, Mr. Chair. We are kept up to date on the occupancy status of most of our residential applications. We don't necessarily choose to wait until the final door is opened in the development opportunity. We would look to, a certain point within there, whether it's, 10% full, 20% full, that type of thing, depending on the size of the occupancy. And that's when we would try to dedicate the resources for that. In the Leslie North development, I realized that some of the growth or the development has slowed down a little bit, but however, there still are families that are going to be moving in there shortly, and they need to be afforded the same protection. So I hope that answers your question. We don't necessarily have standards such as the police with a certain number of residents. That's when you have to have a certain number of police constables. We don't necessarily have that. My job as the fire chief is to come back to recommend to council at the appropriate opportunity. So I hope that answers your question. We do monitor the growth as it happens, and like was said before, we come back with the appropriate reports and recommendations at that time.
So I'm glad we're reporting yearly. I really think that we have to give the fire service more opportunity. I do understand the time lag between getting set with staff, apparatus to delivery, and that I fully understand that 2-3 years lag there. I get it. The partnership model I like, yearly reports I like. The community province, the community risk assessment is going to be good news for the fire service and more accountability to municipalities. I like that. I think you do too. I would like to have sprinklers. I've moved motions before. I've spoken to it when I first got elected. I would like to see sprinklers in every single residential unit. And I would like us to really, as a council, support our fire service and support fire safety and work towards some sort of mandate on that. And I would like to work with the chief to make moving a motion. I'm saying it publicly now. I would like to see sprinklers in every single one of our households, certainly new households, and find a way of which we can give some benefit with our planning to work collaboratively to make sure that safety and security and efficiencies continue with the best interest. Leading to that, I'd like to know a couple of things that aren't in the report. How is the Yonge Street Viva affecting response times?
Okay. That's your time, Councillor Munch. You can
Oh,
go a
I'm
second
sorry.
round.
I'll go a second round after.
But I'll put that question out there. So Chief Burbidge, a question regarding Viva.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, during the construction phase, it certainly was an impact on the north and south travel up and down Yonge Street. now that it is open, we have, well, even going back to the planning stages, we were working with the planning community to try to optimize our response time by using the Viva bus lanes as our course of travel. So during the construction, I will say that it was hampered, but however, now that the construction is for the most part complete, there is probably a marked difference in the response time.
Yeah, I'll reserve for a
Thanks,
second.
Councillor
Thank you.
Munch. Okay, Regional and Local, Councillor Pirelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to thank everyone for their involvement here today, from the chief to the presenters and to my council colleagues, especially our staff, Commissioner Jocelyn, for providing clarity for some of the questions we may have had. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move a receipt of the report for information purposes only at this time.
It's been moved and seconded, Councillor.
It has? Oh.
Councillor West is seconded. You second to speak, Councillor. Okay.
All right. So I am happy to support that then, if it's already been moved and seconded. I think that this report is a good start. It gives us a foundation on which to move on and to grow with. As was said by the consultant, this is a living document, and we're going to work with it. Of course, as we start to go through it on a more detailed scrutinization, things will change. And we may want to add, we may want to delete, and we might augment, and so on. So that's what this is. It's a very detailed document. There's a lot of questions that I have. Some have been answered, but I'm going to continue to read it, absorb it, digest it, and examine it, so that at the time of request for implementation of these, that we'll have a better handle on it. So yes, as a foundation, this excellent report. Chief, you're to be commended for all your work, and please extend our gratitude to the men and women of the fire department. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I think that's it for our speakers. I definitely want to say thank you to the presenters and to you, Chief Burbidge, for all the cooperation that your department has given council over the past 3 years. We've got obviously cooperation from all departments, but fire services has absorbed a large amount of the cost and helped us to achieve the 0% tax increase. By phasing in and implementing a plan, you've had the request for more firefighters on the books for some time, but you've been able to maintain fire services. You've been able to maintain your response rates. You've done a great job and held off with those requests. And I can tell you right now, you've got my wholehearted support as we go through this budget process to catch up with the hiring that needs to be done in fire services. And you have my support for the authorization going forward, for the new trucks to be put into play. And with regards to the new fire hall, I think we have to step back a bit. I understand that it's a need that's identified in the Firemaster plan. But if we're talking about the northeast corner of Richmond Hill, I think we have to cooperate with our neighbors. We're talking about the boundary of Aurora, Stouffville, and Markham. All of those growing communities have growing fire services needs. And I think before Richmond Hill goes and constructs a new fire hall in the northeast corner of Richmond Hill, that we have to work out a better arrangement with those overlapping municipalities that also require fire services to be expanded to that area, and see if we can't work out an arrangement that is preferable to all four of the municipalities building a fire hall on that corner, and an area that's going to have some huge pockets of population, but then large expanses of preserved conservation lands that will never be built upon. So I'm looking forward to engaging other municipalities and working with you, Chief Burbidge, to fulfill our needs for a new fire station in the north end of Richmond Hill, but to do it in a way that can be wise economically. But again, congratulations for this report, this guiding document. Now we have a very good picture of our emerging needs and needs that are emerging through the different type of housing, the growth we're experiencing in Richmond Hill, and we have a framework to address those needs going forward. But you've got my support. You've got my support on additional firefighters and whatever it takes to provide that service. I don't see fire services as a burden on our financial planning, as was said. I think that's where we have to start. We have to make sure that we have excellent fire services available to our residents, and then we take a look at where else we can use property tax dollars. But one of the most important things that is covered through the property tax bill is the assurance of excellent fire services. So we start there and then look at other other uses for those tax dollars. So thank you very much, Chief, and thanks, members of council, for your questions. We've got a motion on the floor. It was moved by Councillor Chan, and I'll just confirm, Councillor West, I think you did second. You spoke second.
I think I did. I certainly said it in my head. I just can't remember whether it came out my mouth or not. It was my intention to do so, though, however.
Okay, very good. So it's moved and seconded, the receipt of the Firemaster plan for information purposes. All in favor? Any opposed?
If I may, I have a couple more questions. I'd like to get a second round if I can.
Okay, so I'm retracting that vote. We'll put it to a vote again. Councillor Munch wants a second opportunity to ask questions. Go ahead, Councillor Munch.
Sorry, I'll be quick. Sorry, guys, but just have a few questions. So with regard to following up our sprinklers, we need to get there, and we were so close with the Townhood and Vaughan and everything else we're trying to do on that sprinkler. I think we really could do that. And this has been an issue for me since 1996. So I've been kind of on this when I was before council, or before I was on council. The one thing I missed in the report, and I'd like to know if anybody talks about, has there been any thought, or did I miss it, on secondary suites, nanny suites, flats? Where is that as a response to fire safety, as we're going to have more density inside neighborhoods on existing dwellings? Has that been a discussion or a thought for the fire service?
Chief Burbidge.
To you, Mr. Chairman, to Councillor Munch. Yes, we continue to talk with city staff about the intensification and I'll say the safety requirements for secondary suites. So that is a continual process. When we are involved, we do recommend fire code measures that are available to us to be put in place that it would augment the safety of the individuals that are living in the secondary suites. So yes, we do continue to have those discussions, and it is I guess foremost in our thoughts as we go forward.
I'm really concerned about the underground suites. So I want that balance between public safety and making sure that we get people, now that the province has said that secondary suites are mandated and others are looking forward. It's a great opportunity for us to actually upgrade people and to move into those sprinkler systems and to get into those responsive education and not make it too rigid, whereby people say, forget it, and then run to a situation. For members of council, there is a situation where Richmond Hill, where a family had a house destroyed or severely damaged, and they have no coverage. And they had coverage, but they don't have coverage because of secondary suites. And that example is going to become more common because secondary suites are now becoming common. And I don't want people to be having public safety or having fire. Fire service is the top three. It's such a thing we talk about, but don't focus on because they do such a great job. not just because when they respond, but because of the great management and the leadership they have as a whole. Nobody's perfect, but having said that so I'm going to say to you that commitment to how we get the delivery of a safe and vibrant community and making sure that the efficiency and the effectiveness of our great management and our delivery continues. But we also have to realize that we're at the mature end of our life cycle. We're not growing like we were. York Region advised that we are the mature end. We're going to have a scarce dollars at the municipal level. Going to make it real trouble because we are not going to getting the growth. People are seeing change, but again, just so everybody knows, we had 2,300 units built in 2001. We're at 890. We're a third of the growth that we were 20 years ago. Different kind of growth, though. Much more difficult growth for firefighting. Don't have those plausibility dollars. So I really encourage everyone to start working much more. It's a much different management, and that's why I'm really excited to have Mr. Burbidge there. I raise a concern to tell you openly, very big commitment to me, from me, and I'm on there. And I am on side with Councillor Barros to say, hey, we got to make sure at council that we are understanding that the fire service has been the backbone of what's been happening here to keep our budget under control, meaning that they've been incredibly efficient and effective, not at the same level or at a much higher level than some of the other departments, and they deserve a heck of a lot of praise. Now we got some tough choices to support them, and we have to work them not just in this municipality, but across province-wide, in my view. So I thank you. I really look forward to having a conversation. I'm glad that we're going to be receiving this for further information and coming down to budget. Thank you all.
If I might add, Councillor, the community risk assessment does address second suites and residential sprinklers within that document.
Great. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Munch. And I see the treasurer's got his hand up. Maybe he's got a number for us before we put this to a vote. Mr. Dexter?
Yep. So thank you, Mr. Acting Mayor. I do have numbers. I have two numbers for you, and I hope it suffices for the question. Of the gross budget of the total, some $185 million, which are all our operating expenses, fire services accounts for 15% of it. That's 15% of it. As a portion of the tax levy, that's taking away all net revenues and so forth from all areas. It's about 22% of Richmond Hill's portion of the tax bill. I hope this helps.
Thank you very much. That's great. Okay. So we've exhausted the speakers list. All in favor of the motion on the floor to receive this report? Okay. Any opposed? Okay. That carries. Thank you very much, Chief Burbidge and your team.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Our next presentation is from the region of York. We've got with us today Tracy Kerrigan, our Master Plan Advisor, and Wendy Kemp, Acting Director of Infrastructure Asset Management from York Region. They're here to talk to us regarding York Region's Water and Wastewater Master Plan update. Their presentation is going to be 15 minutes. And go ahead, Ms. Kerrigan.
It's actually Miss Kemp, so I'll just start.
Ms. Kemp. Okay.
So good morning, Acting Mayor DiPaolo and members of council. Thank you for providing this opportunity for us to share this important planning initiative that is underway to address servicing requirements to meet growth needs to 2051. My name is Wendy Kemp, and I am the Acting Director of Infrastructure Asset Management in the Environmental Services Department. And along with me today is Tracy Kerrigan, our Master Plan Advisor for Water and Wastewater. Tracy and I are here to provide you with the key highlights of the York Region's draft Water and Wastewater Infrastructure Master Plan that has been updated to align with the region's municipal comprehensive review. Next slide, please. Our presentation today will cover 5 areas, and we'll give you an overview on how we are building on the 2016 Master Plan, the key growth-related infrastructure, a brief summary of engagement activities, and finally, the next steps to complete the Master Plan update. Next slide, please. This work is very integrated with York Region's planning, finance, and transportation teams. As endorsed by Regional Council, we are instructed to keep the fiscal strategy front and center on all decisions relating to growth. The Master Plan supports a number of regional growth management initiatives underway, including the Municipal Comprehensive Review, which is required to update the regional official plan. It also provides key inputs to the region's development charge bylaw, which will be presented to Regional Council in Q1 of 2022. The Water and Wastewater Master Plan update final report to Council is anticipated to land in early 2022. Next slide, please. The region has a long history of master planning that occurs generally in 5-year cycles. Each update reviews the previous plan and fine-tunes the results by updating population forecasts, infrastructure status, including completed projects, costs, and timing, and aligns with regulatory requirements. Federal and provincial legislation guides the development of the plan, and in particular for servicing within the Greenbelt, the Oak Ridges Moraine, and the Lake Simcoe watershed. We also use the One Water principles of innovation, integration, and infrastructuring, which encourages us to plan holistically by seeking innovative solutions to complex problems, integrating the needs of asset management and operational constraints with the needs of growth, and relying on the successful outcomes of demand management programs like water conservation and inflow and infiltration reduction. And of course, infrastructuring by using the existing system to its fullest capacity. Next slide, please. This updated master plan extends the planning horizon from 2041, as per the previous master plan, to 2051 to align with the growth forecast. We have used the March 2021 approved land needs assessment, recognizing that that was draft and subject to some revisions as directed by Regional Council recently at their October meeting. Based on the outcomes from Council, we are incorporating these changes into the final version of the master plan document. As directed by Regional Council, this plan assumes the Upper York Water Reclamation Centre is in place to service growth in the communities of East Gwillimbury and portions of Newmarket and Aurora. As you may be aware, the province enacted the York Region Wastewater Act in October this year, which puts an indefinite hold on the decision by the Minister of the Ministry of Environment and Parks on the environmental assessment for Upper York servicing solutions. And this also prevents any action to be taken by the region to advance this project and seeks to limit the province's ability to take these actions. The province also announced the creation of an expert advisory panel to provide advice on options to address wastewater servicing capacity in York Region and future growth. Depending on the timing and the type of decision by the province, a re-evaluation of the water wastewater infrastructure requirements may be required and would likely be addressed outside the time frame of this master plan. Tracy will now explain the details within the plan, including how it relates to your municipality.
Thanks, Wendy. Next slide, please. The master plan update continues to build on the existing servicing strategies that were recommended in the 2016 plan. These maps show the general direction that towns and cities in the region will receive drinking water supply and where they will discharge wastewater flows. To meet drinking water needs in 2051, the region will continue to rely on 3 main sources of water supply: from Lake Ontario sources within existing service agreements with Peel Region and City of Toronto, continued use of local groundwater wells, and Lake Simcoe sources. For wastewater treatment, growth needs are met by assuming the Upper York solution is approved with the Water Reclamation Centre in place, continued reliance on Lake Ontario treatment through agreements with Peel and Durham regions, and continued reliance on standalone systems. Next slide, please. To implement the recommended servicing strategies, the draft infrastructure plan was developed as seen on these maps. You can see the proposed phasing of future growth projects shown in green, yellow, red, and is overlaid on top of the existing servicing system. These maps provide a snapshot of the works planned across the whole region. From the region's perspective, our infrastructure functions across local municipal boundaries to service the region as a whole, and in most cases are not necessarily meant to service any single municipality on its own. I will dive into more details for the infrastructure servicing growth needs in Richmond Hill over the next few slides. Next slide, please. Most of the projects in the 2016 master plan have been carried forward into the new draft plan, excuse me, with some minor adjustments. The projects identified in the first 10-year period from 2021 to 2030 are consistent with the region's existing 10-year capital plan that's in place today. To address the additional decade of growth, this master plan includes an additional $1.4 billion of infrastructure. In total, $4.3 billion of growth-related water and wastewater infrastructure is needed to meet growth targets established through the Municipal Comprehensive Review. I'll now explain the details within the plan as it relates to Richmond Hill. Next slide, please. The region's water infrastructure system is quite mature throughout most of the southern region, and it's mostly in place. Water servicing to the Richmond Hill Langstaff Gateway Urban Growth Center will be proceeding as planned and will be completed in a few years, approximately by 2024. A new project, the York Water System East Expansion Project, located in Richmond Hill and Aurora, will take water from a new reservoir in Markham to bring additional water supply north. This project involves a new pumping station and water main and is planned to be in place by about 2041. That's the yellow in the center kind of piece there. This project is expected to benefit and improve resilience of the entire water system, bringing secondary supply to the north and in the south, giving us more flexibility to move water around the system. And finally, the North Richmond Hill pumping station is planned to be decommissioned by 2041 as the Richmond Hill and Vaughan systems become more fully integrated. Next slide, please. Thank you. Near-term wastewater projects also match the region's current 10-year capital plan. Again, the Richmond Hill Langstaff Gateway Wastewater Project was tendered earlier this year to service key growth in that area, and it'll be done by around 2023. The Yonge Street sewer twinning in Oak Ridges is planned to be completed over the next 10 years. The environmental assessment for this project has started. It is intended to increase conveyance capacity to accommodate growth and address rehab needs of the existing sewer. Pending outcomes of the EA, this project will accommodate growth in Aurora, parts of Newmarket, Richmond Hill, and King City. Completion is expected around 2030. By 2051, a relief sewer for the central collector will be needed to meet additional growth by diverting flows from the central collector sewer into the new Richmond Hill Langstaff Gateway sewer to free up some downstream capacity. Further downstream in the York-Durham sewage system, to provide more context on what's happening in the larger system and eventually Duffin Creek plant, various works will be needed at different times throughout the planning period as flows increase from the majority of the York region system, including from Richmond Hill. As flows continue to increase, we anticipate that further upgrades and expansions of the Duffin Creek plant will be needed above and beyond anything identified in previous master plans. Additional detailed studies will be done to refine the scope and timing of these upgrades. In the conveyance system, significant improvements in the YDSS will be needed to support the large growth expected throughout the system.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Mrs. Kerrigan.
Yes.
It appears we've lost quorum. We need council members. We need 5 council members to be displaying on their screens. So if council members are here, and you can, okay, we've reestablished quorum. Apologies for the interruption. Go ahead, Ms. Kerrigan.
No problem. A small but innovative project introduced in this master plan is the Bathurst flow control system. It is intended to hold back flows in a way that optimizes the capacity of the York-Durham sewage system and could potentially allow for us to defer some of the downstream upgrades just mentioned. Next slide, please. So that was the infrastructure plan, and now I want to talk a little bit about what happens next. The master plan is just a plan. While it is created with the best available information and understanding at the time, assumptions need to be monitored over time. We expect to make updates and course corrections as things change or better information becomes available. The intent of the regional master plan provides direction, not necessarily a definitive outcome. The projects that have been identified will get implemented through the 10-year capital plan, which sets out sequencing of projects and programs over the 10-year period and allocates funding to actually be able to do the work. A review of the capital plan happens regularly. Project delivery is coordinated with system capacity, monitoring, and fiscal strategy, completed concurrently with the annual budget update. To bridge the gap between long-term planning and short-term development pressures, the region monitors development activity and system capacity. This information is used to understand near-term infrastructure capacity against the expected system demands. Critical infrastructure is regularly monitored to view trends in actual usage and understand the impact of water conservation and inflow infiltration reduction programs over time. All of this work together results in capacity assignments to local municipalities, which are then in turn allocated by municipalities to specific developments. Next slide, please. For many years now, the region has depended on a variety of demand management approaches to help stretch existing water wastewater infrastructure. Many of these initiatives arose out of requirements under environmental approvals and have been proven to be highly effective at managing on our regional local systems. Both the long-term water conservation strategy and the inflow infiltration reduction strategy have been updated this year and were recently submitted to the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Parks. These updated strategies continue to build on the successes of the past while looking for increased collaboration with our local municipal partners as a single integrated system. In particular, the revised long-term water conservation strategy has an increased focus on non-revenue water, introducing new ways to calculate leakage and improve on flushing practices. The revised inflow infiltration plan establishes new targets for local municipalities to fix systems in high priority areas that are known problem areas based on our extensive digital monitoring network. These two programs are important to help manage flows in the systems and are integral in the long-range planning of water wastewater infrastructure. Monitoring of these programs helps us keep a finger on the pulse of what's happening with water consumption trends and a good sense of linear system responses to climate change through the I&I reduction program. Next slide, please. The master plan has been engaging with residents, local municipal staff, the development community, and Indigenous communities since 2019. The final public open house was completed in July of this year. York Region has been meeting with Richmond Hill staff on this project since 2019, and the draft infrastructure plan was shared with staff at a meeting on June 28th. Their comments and feedback will inform the final report. Next slide, please. This presentation has been shared with all local municipal councils throughout York Region. The next steps to complete the master plan update include providing the draft infrastructure plan to regional council in November, tomorrow afternoon, committee of the whole. The final report will be prepared for council endorsement in early 2022, which will be followed by statutory 30-day public and agency review. Next slide, please. And thank you for your time this morning. And Wendy and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Kerrigan and Ms. Camp. Very important, a critical service that we offer that really the Region of York does all the work, and we send out the bills and collect the money on basically a flow through cost to our residents. So the first person to speak is Councillor Barros on this.
Just a quick question. Wastewater, Oak Ridge's water odor facility. Do we have an update on that? Odor facility, Young and King Road.
So through you, Deputy Mayor, I am familiar with the project. I don't have the exact time. I don't know if Tracy, if you have it from our capital delivery. Mike Rabeau did, our director of capital planning, just did a presentation to regional council. And I don't believe that project was actually flagged in there, but I can get back to you in terms of timing.
The reason I ask is because it's been continually promised to the residents of Oak Ridges, particularly if you live in the area of Young and North Lake Road. The stench at times is unbearable. And of course, at the boots on the ground level, we are the ones who get the complaints for inactivity, where in fact it's a regional responsibility. So I would have liked that you would have had some sort of information on that today. I'll pass it on to the residents that at some point you'll get back to us.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. And Ms. Kemp, you can communicate the status there, and I'd be curious to know myself where we're at with that.
Absolutely,
Okay.
no problem.
So, okay, I still need to move her in a second. Okay, Councillor Silovitz, you're next to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll gladly move this. with thanks. Just one small question or request to Ms. Carrigan and Ms. Kemp. Could we please get a copy of your presentation slides? If you could send it to members of council, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Yes, most definitely. I believe the clerk has a copy of this presentation.
Okay, and the clerk is nodding that he will distribute to all council members your presentation. Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Silovitz. I need a seconder then to receive the presentation and the report. Okay, thank you, Councillor Chan. Anyone else have questions for the presenters or want to speak to the motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, and any opposed? Okay, that carries. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time today, and yeah, great work.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Take care. Okay, that's all for our presentations. Now, we move back to our regular scheduled business. And then we do have delegations now. And the first delegation is Pat Pollock from Mayvern Area Residents Association regarding item 13.1 and regarding the nature and rate of infill development in their area there. So, Ms. Pollock, are you with us?
I'm trying to get on video.
There you go. You're connected. You just turn your video on, your microphone. Okay.
I keep clicking on video and it doesn't go.
Well, we can definitely hear you, Ms. Pollock. We hear you loud and clear. So you can go ahead. You've got up to 5 minutes to address council.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I would like to call attention to the letter that was written by 3 residents who live in the Mayvern, Sanderson, Drummond, and Law Crescents area and signed by 170 residents. On their behalf, I just got a beep on my thing. Okay, on their behalf, I would like to summarize their main concerns. The planned nature of the neighborhood is compromised when these large houses that are not a good fit are placed within an existing uniformly planned and built neighborhood. There is a change in the affordability of these newly built homes in comparison to the existing homes. The new homes are over double the cost of our existing homes. Those more affordable homes, which only require renovation, are demolished. I know you talk about affordable housing, yet you are destroying it. Privacy and enjoyment of neighbors' properties are on the line. Large houses block light and overlook existing backyards, and residents cannot use their own properties as they have in the past. Current homeowners have rights, which are being disrespected. There is a loss of mature trees in the process, changing the streetscape and beauty of the existing neighborhood. I know you talk about the environment and climate change, yet you allow the destruction of old trees, which store and absorb the most carbon. We believe this destruction of our neighborhood has happened because of the system in place in Richmond Hill. First, when no variances are requested, only the zoning bylaw is taken into account. There is no consideration for the compatibility or fit requirement of the official plan. So there is no attempt to have a newly built infill building fit nicely with what exists. Planning staff state if a proposal conforms to an in-place zoning, then the official plan does not have an operative effect. Why not? Why does the official plan not apply to all proposed developments? By omitting this stage of evaluation of a proposed plan, an owner builder can build anything, even if it is not compatible with the neighborhood. This strategy destroys the character of the existing stable planned neighborhoods. Second, we see that in the staff reports for application for variances, there are misleading statements such as planning staff considered the proposed dwelling to be compatible with and generally in keeping with the character of the surrounding neighborhood. This is simply not true when you look at what is proposed and what currently exists in the planned subdivision. False statements such as this open the door for anything to be built. Third, when variances requests are taken to COA, there is no consideration of all 4 tests as required by the Planning Act. The official plan statements of compatibility and massing, nor the urban design guidelines are considered. Planning staff has stated, when a minor variance is requested, then such applications must have regard to the policies of the official plan that speak to compatibility and neighborhood character. The COA members, in our opinion, need to have training as to what is needed to do their jobs properly and fairly for all, residents and developers. They must accept arguments related to the official plan, not tell us, if you want massing to be considered, you need to go to council. That's quoted from the March 4th, 2021 COA hearing. Fourthly, the decision reports on variance requests need to have reasons explained in detail as to why those requests were granted or denied. Stating the 4 tests as reasons with no explanation is not enough. I can give more details if needed. In fact, I welcome conversation with council members and staff so that the Planning Act, the official plan, and the zoning bylaws are followed. They are currently not being followed. We need to see something happen that is a clear indication of how valuable our neighborhoods are to this city. We need something now before our neighborhoods are totally destroyed. Bigger is not better. The precedence this council has set by allowing these out-of-place infill developments with or without variances is totally unacceptable. The quality of life of the current residents is being compromised. After reviewing the current documents on neighborhoods to go to public meetings next week, all I see is a history lesson of what we have currently. We need changes. Let history not repeat itself. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Ms. Pollock. We do have your letter from the concerned residents of Sanderson and Mayvern, and we've got that petition with 176 signatures. So thank you for your presentation and the work that's gone into your submission. I'll turn it over to Councillor Silovitz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and my thanks to Mrs. Pollock, who is the chair of the Mayvern Area Residents Association, also known as MARA, and to all the residents who sit on that committee. They are perhaps one of the most engaged and participatory residents associations I have ever come across, and I want to thank them for all of their involvement. I want to assure MARA that I support all of their concerns, and I will ensure whenever this topic comes up for discussion that it is discussed appropriately and adequately. I brought it up when we had our City Plan 2041 meeting a few weeks ago. I specifically mentioned infill development. And infill development in our established neighborhoods is a huge concern to our existing residents. Most severely affected in Ward 5 is the Mara area, which is the area broadly surrounding Castle Rock and Avenue Road, between Carville and Weldrick. The other area of concern in Ward 5 is the area between Yonge and Bayview, between Major, Mac, and Weldrick. There are many older homes that are torn down to build a bigger home or 2 homes on that existing property. And the angst that it causes amongst our current residents who have lived there most of their lives. They've brought their children up in that community. Their entire worth and wealth is invested in those properties. And it is of huge concern to them as they see the existing neighborhood around them changing. While we all expect change and understand change is going to happen, I do agree with Mrs. Pollock that at some point we have to understand the immense stress that this is putting on our existing residents in the manner in which, regarding the manner in which regarding the manner in which these neighborhoods are becoming changed. And like I said, change is going to occur. Infill development is going to occur. It is part and parcel of our official plan. It's part and parcel of the growth plan and the provincial policy statement. But there seems to be some kind of a lag between what is actually happening and what should be happening. So I trust that our staff will continue to examine this very, very closely as we move through the discussions for City Plan 2041 and the comprehensive zoning bylaw, Zone Richmond Hill. I want to encourage Mrs. Pollock and her residents and all other residents involved in very active residents associations such as the Bernard one and the Umbrella Group. Your words and your participation in this particular discussion is invaluable. And I know that Mara has been involved already with one LPAT, OMB, OLT, whatever it is called now. Sorry, can't remember the name. Hearing. And I commend them for their dedication. They attend all Committee of Adjustment meetings, and they speak their mind, and their voices must be respected and heard. So thank you. I'll gladly move receipt of Mrs. Pollock's deputation and the petition, and I ask that staff specifically ensure that this document and the words from the delegation are somehow connected to all the discussions that we are having with regards to City Plan 2041 and Zone Richmond Hill. It is of huge importance that this is front and center. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Mrs. Pollock. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Silovitz. Thanks for the motion to receive. Next, I have Councillor Chan and then Councillor West. Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, the delegate, for voicing the concern not only on herself but on behalf of the 170 neighbors who signed the petition. And I hear what Councillor Secretary just said. Is certainly that to the extent that the existing residents have this particular opportunity and also the forum to have the voices heard and to be considered in a balanced approach as we move forward in the official plan 2041. I'm happy to second the motion to receive with thanks to Ms. Pollock's delegation and also the 170 persons petition. In particular, is timely. I believe that's the date, November 18th, which is Thursday of next week, is for the southern part of Richmond Hill. That would be the time for the public forum for the comprehensive zoning bylaw review as a part of the consultation. And part of the topics or included in the topics would be on infill development and also other things that happen in neighborhood, because I would stress zoning bylaw is not something that I'm relating to us. Zoning bylaw actually govern everything in the whole city for every property, whether it's in fact relating to driveway, relating to where particular garden shed may be put in, and so on and so on. So I think it's really timely, and I encourage any members of public who are watching and listening now, and Ms. Potter and your neighbors, register to attend the November 18th, that in the evening, And I believe the website is richmondhill.ca/RX zone. Please get involved, and we'd like to hear from you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'm happy to second the motion to receive with thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Chan. Councillor West?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you to the presenter, Ms. Pollock. I am aware of the situation in that area, and I do want to echo, I think, some of the sentiments that I'm hearing from the delegate, and the folks that signed that petition. The area that is in question here was built all at roughly the same time, and it does have a fairly unique character to it. And I think that's part of the situation, the way I understand it, is that the expectation of living in that area is that, the character that people kind of signed up for will be maintained to a reasonable degree. And I think that is one of the points that I hear that is hinging on the concern. And I think actually a good point was made too, I was aware of a while ago, that the type of infill that is happening in the area that the concern is hinging on is taking down a more modest dwelling and building something that's a lot bigger. And I think that does have an impact on affordability, and I think it really needs to be considered. As we make decisions here on council, I mean, we are making decisions for a lot of different reasons with a lot of different inputs that go into those decisions. But I think affordability is something that is clearly an incredibly important thing right now in our neighborhood and many others in GTA. I would like to reiterate the things that Councillor Silovitz and Councillor Chan, I think, were saying or stressing that I think that the comprehensive zoning bylaw process that we're undergoing right now is an important part of the solution, I believe, to a problem such as this, because one of the problems I have, and I'll use my own ward, Ward 4 as an example, we have zoning bylaws that are really not up to date, and they don't serve anybody well. They don't serve the community well, because the expectations of what used to be able to be acceptable in today's version of that are not the same. And it doesn't serve the people who own the property very well either, because no matter what they're proposing, it's probably not going to be entirely in line with a very old bylaw. Now, I think the bylaw in the Mayvern area is more up to date than the one in parts of Ward 4, but regardless, I think from what I understand of it, part of the same situation still applies. So, long story short, on that point, I think it is very, very important for the residents in that area to be very engaged and diligent in the comprehensive zoning bylaw process. And Councillor Chan led some details of that opportunity coming up, and I think that's very important. This group is well organized. They are well engaged, and I think with those characteristics, they probably will be able to make their views well known in that process. So I think I'll just quickly end by saying, the challenges of infill are not uncommon in many areas of the city, but I think every area that I've dealt with those types of challenges tends to have a unique flavor to the challenges. I think in the Mayvern area, from what I'm understanding, it is a little different. And I think that we, planning staff and us on council need to really understand what that uniqueness is, because I think at the end of the day, it really is important, I think, in Richmond Hill or any other community, I suppose, to have a level of uniqueness within communities, within neighborhoods, because I think it adds value to the overall city or community, whatever. And I think we do need to balance the needs of growth and the needs of maintaining that uniqueness. So I'll end there. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I'm happy to support the motion that's on the floor at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor West. Councillor Barrows.
Thank you so much. I have to admit, I've been listening diligently, and I don't really know what my friend really articulated, but I'm going to be a little bit more clear, I think. And I don't know, Mr. Chair, would I be allowed to ask a question of the delegate?
Ms. Pollock is here. We have a motion on the floor, and we have a procedural bylaw that it says once we have a motion on the floor, members of the public cannot interact with council. So,
But I'm not a member of the public. I'm a member of council. Am I allowed to interact with the public? It's the reverse.
you're able to ask questions, yes.
Very good. Thank you. Through you to Ms. Pollock. My question is, I have parts of Oak Ridges where the exact same thing is happening. And the market is giving us houses that don't look like the old houses. Do you and your ratepayers association with your local councillor have any suggestions on how we can alter the market so that we can try to shape the market to build houses that look like your current houses so that you don't have this change that you're considering as undesirable?
I think this all comes down to how proposals are evaluated in the planning process. Every neighborhood has their own character. And if a proposal is made to have a house built that doesn't fit into that character, then planning should be working with the developer or the builder to make it fit. For example, the official plan states that there is a compatibility or a fit requirement that should be adhered to. That should apply to all proposed developments, not just those that are up for variance requests. Second thing is the urban design guidelines are part of the official plan and they are not followed. There are some significant suggestions in that document that help to make the proposed developments fit into the existing character of the neighborhoods. If those documents were followed, I believe we would not have the situation we have, either in York Ridges or where we are.
Okay. Thanks, Ms. Pollock. Thanks for that.
Thank you for those comments. I guess the reality that I'm trying to bring to the situation is the fact that council at times says no, strenuously no, big pushback. And the applicant appeals. The province says, well, by all means, go ahead. And then it comes back to us to do exactly what we've been told to do by our parents. People have the right to make a zoning bylaw amendment. They have the right to make an official plan amendment as set out in the Ontario Planning Act. So I'm just trying to see if, and I didn't hear it at this point, but I'm always listening for that input. And again, what I was asking was, how can we change the market? Because that's the demand. People want these homes. It's not some big bad person that says, ha, 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 I'm going to mess your little neighborhood up. This is what people want. They're desiring it. They're seeking it out. They're paying huge dollar values for the land to build that. So I understand the struggle, but I'm trying to figure out if anyone has a solution other than just complaining that we don't like it and giving virtue signaling to the fact that we're going to fight for the residents. I'm looking for real solutions. If they exist, how do you get that family that wants a large home, because this is the crux of it, the market? How do you convince them, no, you don't need that big, huge home. You should have a home that's more fitting with our neighborhood because we've been here for 100 years. That's the struggle. That's the reality of it. I don't mean to be disparaging. I just mean just to be out there in the open with the realities of the market. I'm all ears. If any member of council or the member of the public wants to reach out with a viable solution, I'll listen. I'll be speaking later to to an application in front of me in Oak Ridges where we have this exact same problem. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Barros. Regional and local, Councillor Pirelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks to the delegate for the delegation. I stand with the residents. It's their neighborhood. If they want to maintain the character of the neighborhood, they should be able to. I guess the challenge is not everyone in the neighborhood agrees. And so when someone exercises their rights to sell their property, they do it with the expectation that they're going to get top dollar. And in order to get top dollar, it's because somebody wants to do something bigger and better. And so how do we balance that, the fact that people want to get top dollar for their home? I mean, can we ban people from selling their properties? I don't think we can do that. I don't think the Planning Act allows us to do that. I don't think that, everybody agrees, and the 172 is a large amount of people that, don't want this. But I think if we really sat them all down at some point and we asked them, well, when it's time for you to sell, do you want to be able to get $1.5 million or $2 million because of the land value? Because if we take away, if somehow we could pass a bylaw that would say you can't build anything other than, and we can do it, the footprint that's on the property and the same size. In other words, you can renovate or rebuild what's currently there in the same style and shape and square footage, then that would dramatically bring down the value of the property. And I would bet if we asked all 172 if they would like a bylaw like that passed, I think the answer would be no. So it is a challenge. I understand there's disruption anytime that, one person sells and another person wants to build a home, and there's dust in the area and the streets get dirty, and, there's all kinds of concerns that go on. But this is really the price of progress. I mean, 100 years ago, that neighborhood was a farm. And when the application came forward to build those homes, there was great opposition to doing that, as is always the case. There's always someone who says, no, I'm happy the way it is right now. I don't want to see any changes. But the reality is that the same people want to get top dollar for their property when they go to sell it. So it is a big conundrum. And I don't know what the answer is. There's a lot of questions, but like some of my colleagues have said, it has to be a balance. And we understand that at the end of the day, we're not the final decision makers. The OLT will make that decision for us. We have issues, as Councillor Barros said, that we'll be dealing with later on, where this council stood firm with the neighborhood, and we turned down the application, and it went to the OLT, OMB, or LPAT. They keep changing the name on us, and it was approved. That's a struggle we have to deal with. So we have to temper and gauge each application on its own merits. Yes, nobody who lives in a 1,200 square foot bungalow wants to see a 4,500 square foot home next to them. But 50 years from now, maybe that entire neighborhood will be 4,500 square foot homes. And who knows what the future will bring. Maybe 100 years from now, there'll be a petition and a council that says, we're not allowing 20,000 square foot, 16-story residential homes in our neighborhood. Who knows what the future brings? But I guess it's a balance between the rights of an individual versus the rights of the community. And that's always a challenge. And like I said, I'm here to stand with the residents. I just don't know how we could implement something like that. And if If we did, what kind of opposition would we get to that implementation? A lot of questions, sadly, not enough answers. But thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pirelli. Councillor Munch, you want to speak to this also?
Good day. I think it's interesting. I wasn't going to say anything, but I really think it's a great opportunity to have a conversation. I thank the members of council who are actually trying to engage the residents to have a conversation. And I love some of the dialogue. Just to give some, little context. In 1971, 50 years ago, we had 2 areas in Richmond Hill that had water, 2 outside of a well. And in 1971, when our area was destined for growth, the whole area changed with sewers and how we grew in various communities, including that area. Imagine 50 years ago, what was there 50 years ago. And houses, let's say, last 50, 75, 100 years. So I also would love to have a balanced community of how we get there. And there's all sorts of discussions. I'm very active on this file. In fact, I am in Ottawa now talking about this with municipal leaders and federal leaders. And I'm going to say to you that on this topic. So I say to the residents, further to Councillor Barrows, is we need to engage as a community to talk about what is our community going to be. We have got a really great opportunity with the rest of the province investing in Richmond Hill right now. It's really rare. You see places like Kingston and London and Barrie saying, yeah, we'll invest in subways and transit and Markham and East Gwillimbury, all subsidizing Richmond Hill at the moment because we're not meeting our growth targets yet. We're getting net investment as if we are. And where are people going to live? And I don't like the context of Manhattan, Richmond Hill, where people have to be really wealthy to be here. If you're not wealthy, you can't afford to be here, even though our median household income is, as last census, $88,353, which is about to be updated in 6 months. I encourage your residents to say, if you don't like change or want to restrict change, then let's talk about the change we do or are going to have going forward. And in all communities, not just as part of this master plan, that as the Ward 1 councillor says, they've got, last numbers we saw at council, because there hasn't been really updated at council since one of the members has no longer with us, but 36% of all the building permits were in Ward 1 on infill and on mid-rise, or I call those areas. And I understand, again, I really do, where we say what's going to happen with those areas that go monster homes. The question is, are we going to be happy with dual occupancy? Or from the residents to go one way, we don't want big dynamic for that type of market. We want to have a smaller dynamic whereby we have 2 and 3 families living in that one household that used to be there, because 50 years ago, when people would have 3, 4, 5, 6 kids domestically, is not happening for our market, generally speaking. And it is going to be a real challenge. And I encourage our official plan of 2010, when you look at its core needs and core priorities of 35% housing affordability, we failed so dramatically and so badly. So now are we going to become a rich man's hill? I hope not. And I encourage the resident and their group to come with an engagement as an open community, because everybody's protesting. Hey, I don't want this, I don't want that. And it's really tough to make choices. It's really tough to manage. And I really would prefer a pragmatic, good planning solution as opposed to a political inferenced one where we can't even talk about, do we want to have trails in the neighborhood? I find it absolutely comical. So I agree with the residents that we want to have where it's at. And for the record, in my ward, when I have people building, we ask them to put the context and they change the architecture, and it's happened several times.
1 minute.
This can happen when you work collaboratively, when you say, hey guys, this is the way it was. We'd like to have this coach house look in the neighborhood. And the builder said, okay, well, let me see if I can redesign it, spend another $100,000, and we'll try to work it through. That can happen. But we need to work collaboratively. And I would encourage the residents, as been offered, to work collaboratively so that we can build the neighborhoods within the neighborhoods and grow the way we need to grow to attract young, vibrant families and have a walkable, livable community. And I really hope that we can go to a planning solution for the best interest of the residents today and tomorrow, as opposed to people talking about what it was like 50, 60 years ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, I think that's it for councillors that wanted to speak. I want to speak to this myself, and I want to thank Ms. Pollock for coming forward and for your residents group. That I've spoke to many people in that area. It's a very strong residents group, and I think they knew exactly what they were signing when 170 residents come forward with a petition, and we have to take it seriously, and we have to assume that they fully understand the ramifications and that this is a legitimate request to in this area limit new and proposed homes to truly match what's existing. And I don't think residential values are necessarily adversely affected. If you have a neighborhood that says you have to comply with the character that we have, and when you have a uniform and character in a unique community, that's something that's sought after by the market. When you can have that insurance that mature neighborhood will remain. That's something people will seek out, a neighborhood like that. This is a great neighborhood. The mature trees that exist in the area are in jeopardy because these new applications. The first thing they do is they clear cut the property to the perimeter before they put in a new home, and that's what I think these residents are asking to avoid, that type of growth that's unwanted. I really want to thank Ms. Pollock for coming forward, and I'll tell you, it's frustrating. As a ward councillor, I went through this in Richville a lot, and the problem with our process is that council makes zoning decisions, and then applications that conform with the zoning, when it's a house being applied to change from one house to an application to replace it with another house, council doesn't have an opportunity to weigh in, and it's very frustrating. It appears that our hands are tied, and we have another body with the Committee of Adjustment making decisions, and those are the key and critical decisions that our residents want the right decision made, and it's completely out of our hands. So it's very frustrating at council. But Ms. Pollock, you've come forward at the right time. Now we're doing our official plan update now, and I would love to engage with you and the residents that you represent and see if we can't amend that official plans in a way that will accommodate your request, because council deals with zoning, and council can put restrictions on zoning in certain areas. And if we can reach consensus with your neighbors, now is the time where we are open. We have that official plan opened up, and changes can be made in specific areas, specific zoning changes in certain neighborhoods, and the Mayvern Sanderson area may be one of them. So thanks very much for enlightening us. Thanks for coming forward. I'm sure everyone who signed that petition is well aware of the ramifications of what they're signing for, and they understand what they want, and hopefully we can engage with your local councillor and with our planning officials here, and maybe now is the time we can do something and accomplish even a small change that will satisfy that community, that they're safeguarded and insulated and protected against unwanted development. So I thank you. I will now put the vote to the motion to a vote to receive this correspondence and this petition from Councillor Silovitz, seconded by Councillor Chan, I believe it was. All in favor? Okay, any opposed? That carries unanimously. Or it carries, yes. Okay, that was 13.1. Our next delegation, well, members of council, and I want to thank the delegations that have been patient since this morning. It is past 12 o'clock now. Would
Motion to break for
would anyone
lunch.
object? So Councillor Barros was going to move for a recess. Someone, okay, Councillor Pirelli seconds that. So Councillor Liu wants to speak to the motion to take a recess. Councillor Liu?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My two delegates, they have work to do. They have to go back to work before 12:30. I would like to ask for indulgence. Either it's a 5 minutes break or we hear them first.
Okay, so we will deal with those two delegations in that item only. That will, this item might take an hour or so, it might take time. But if, because those delegations are waiting, and then we can put the rest of the agenda beyond lunch. So I think that seems to be the will of council. So we will go forward with the two delegations. And okay, for the first is Kayla Menezes from 43 Sapphire Drive regarding the proposed site plan application submitted by Urbicon Properties at 10 Sophia Court. So this is item 13.8. We have two delegations. The first one is Ms. Menezes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kayla.
I'm sorry, Ms. Menezes. I'm sorry. We've lost quorum. We need 5 members of council to be visible on their screen. We cannot continue the meeting. Okay, there we go. Well, seems like Councillor Munch is on. Okay, so that's still only 4. Okay, there's 5. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Menezes. I'm sorry I have to interrupt you if we don't have 5 members of council present, but you go ahead. You have up to 5 minutes to address council.
Okay, perfect. So thank you.
And again, we've lost quorum. I'm very sorry, Ms. Menezes. It seems 3 councillors have just left the meeting. We need to wait for them to return. Your remarks are not official unless we have 5 members of council. We currently do not have a quorum. We cannot continue with the meeting until that happens. Okay. Now, okay, Councillor West has just returned to the council chambers. So now we do have five members. Go ahead, Ms. Menezes. Thanks for your patience.
Okay, so thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. My name is Kayla. I live at 43 Sapphire Drive. Along Leslie, I'm right across a new Urbicon data center that is going to be put up, I'm assuming, in the next couple of months, in the next couple of years. And I'm speaking on behalf of over 200 Richmond Hill residents. Our communities are obviously very upset by this. And I think the underlying problem is that there's a lack of communication from everybody involved. I think that's the biggest problem that we're having right now. Construction of the huge hydro poles that I'm sure everybody has heard of has started at the beginning of the year. There was no notice given. We just have huge hydro poles over 90 feet tall, one in my backyard and one in my front yard. I'm a corner house. So you can all assume that this is, very upsetting for our community. A couple of days ago when Castro invited me to this meeting, I saw the attachments of the potential plans for the first time for the Urbicon data center that's coming up. We never were, consulted again after dealing with Electra and the hydro poles and, different town hall meetings for the past couple of months, fighting to be heard. This is happening now again with the Urbicon data center, which is just going to be put up. So what I'm here today to basically talk about, it's my understanding that there's a 2-story mural going up right across my bedroom window. I saw a picture of the design. It's the Toronto CN Tower, not very, very sci-fi, not very representative of our Richmond Hill community. I'm here to basically, advocate on behalf of my community for open communication throughout this process. Again, we can read the site plans. 2 days ago, I'm learning about this. I still don't understand it. I have millions of questions. And we've already been through this with the hydro poles, and they're just being put up and there's no communication. And in the past couple of segments, we're talking about, maintaining the character of our neighborhood and, not making it like a Manhattan Richmond Hill. Those are like some things that stood out for me. My parents moved here, immigrated here, and they're here for 20 plus years in this home. And now we are like subject to these Urbicon huge data centers. So we appreciate, Castro fighting for us, opening a platform for us to talk on, through different town hall meetings, but everything that we've agreed to, the last amendment to the hydro poles being put in the ground 10 meters or 10 feet, and then the attachment of the light posts or, moving them with, in consultation with our neighbors, having some sort of discussion about that did not happen. Instead, the hydro poles were shaved down 10 feet, and now right outside my window, without that community consultation moving the hydro poles, the wires are up in days, and a new pole has been put up. So you can understand how greatly affected our whole community is being like affected. So what we're asking here right now is some open communication. We want to know the plans. We want to know like what's happening. We're tired of hearing that it's not our responsibility. It's not our problem, like, and passing it off to somebody else. There's a lot of fingers being pointed over the past couple of months, and we're tired. This is a side full-time job that I am doing right now. And, that's not what I want to be doing. So yes, thank you for letting me speak. I think that's all I wanted to say. I'm extremely nervous speaking in front of you all, but thank you for letting me be here today.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Menezes. You did a good job. No need to be nervous. Thanks for that presentation. Now we have one more speaker from 93 Sapphire Drive. It's Glenn Steplock regarding the proposed site plan application submitted by Urbicon Properties. Mr. Steplock, I see you there. Just turn on your video and unmute yourself, and you have up to 5 minutes to address council.
Hi there, folks. Can you hear me?
We can hear you and see you.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Yep, perfect. Okay, so Glenn Steplock, 93 Sapphire, neighbor of Kayla. And essentially we're representing the Sapphire, Sun Valley, Bilberry, and Gemini block. These ones are completely adjacent to the Barker Business Park. Just found out very recently, like within the last couple of days, that there's a mural going up. So I believe the proposal at council today was to talk about this mural, which was an amendment to the original plans. Looks like it's a 16 by 100-foot mural. And to Kayla's point, we've been fighting the Urbicon project. So working with and a lot of council is aware of this, or most of the council is aware of this, that we've been fighting this whole project after it wasn't even presented to us. They pretty much planted these 90-foot poles in our backyards. The amount of anxiety, the amount of stress, mental health issues that these neighbors that are directly impacted is incredible. And it has been a full-time job. To find out that they want to put an additional mural, we had a quick call with the residents, particularly the ones that have to look at this mural every single day. And no offense to whomever is representing the mural or the artwork, but it's not something that we probably want to look at on a daily basis, particularly the homes that have to look at that building every single day. It's literally right across the street from their home. It's going to be a 2-story, 900,000 square foot facility. And they're not happy with that. They're not happy with the lack of consultation. So this is just yet another item that we weren't consulted on. We were absolutely not consulted on the extent of the hydro. We were told with a letter that had very little detail dropped at our floor in the spring that said, hey, we're going to do some hydro work. And then next thing you know, these poles were planted in the yard, and that just took off. And it's just, it's sad that we weren't consulted. The amount of anger, fear, because they don't know what the hydro is going to bring over the years of this running. For those of you that aren't aware, this is bringing in half of the total peak on a daily basis that Richmond Hill uses to this data center. And it'll be running right outside their bedroom windows, 7 by 24 by 365 for as long as that data center runs. So with respect to the mural, we've had other options come through. Plant large scale trees. I know they want to put a berm there, kind of like they did with the building up at the corner. The government integrity building has a berm, but that berm is small. It doesn't really protect, and the trees are tiny. It'll be 30 years before these trees, if they grow, mature. And people are proposing different items. If a mural must go up, maybe it needs to be relevant to the community, relevant to their history, relevant to whatever is here. The mural that they proposed is more of a technology, I presume, the future's in your hand, technology in your hand type of deal. Nobody really wants to look at that mural. They weren't happy with and like I say, no offense if folks are here, but it's not something we wanted to look at. So tons of anxiety with this project to take on to what Kelly has said. And I'm just here representing the community, particularly the homes that back onto that. And we're opposed to everything. The polls, we've made all sorts of recommendations with the polls, and they weren't taken into consideration. They made promise that they would come and knock on doors and ask if we would like to relocate the poles or do something a little bit different. That never happened either. They just simply came in and chopped the top of the poles off. And to be honest, I think they look uglier now than they did prior to the original pole going up. And I'll leave it at that. Opposed unanimously through the neighborhood to both the hydro poles and the mural. And we'd like to have a consultation with anybody that is associated with this, particularly Urbicon, whom I'm thinking is probably not aware or maybe protected from the project. And I think York Region and Electra may have protected Urbicon, but I don't know what I don't know. And maybe Urbicon needs to know how upset the neighborhood is. Those poles should have been on the east side of the street. I'll leave it at that. Maybe Castro or somebody else can weigh in.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Steplock.
You can see the pole behind me too. Sorry to cut you off there. If anybody's wondering what that is, that's a home with a pole right outside their bedroom window. And half the feed of Richmond Hill, the peak of Richmond Hill will be running through that pole. And then that pole is going to be carrying it underground across the street. And we've asked for these poles to be buried underground just through the residents, or move them at Performance Boulevard, move them over, just so that the poles are away from our residents. And just for context for some folks that may or may not have been fully engaged with this. I know Mayor DiPaolo and Castro are fully aware. All right, sorry to cut you off there. Go ahead.
No need to apologize. Thank you very much for your concise remarks. You're covering a lot of ground. We will update members of council as much as possible on what's developed there. We thank you, Mr. Steplock, for your submission and your comments regarding item 13.8. I'm going to bring item 13.8 forward, and I'll ask Councillor Liu to speak first to this. I did see local Councillor Pirelli wants to speak as well, but go ahead, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and especially thank you the two delegates, Kayla and Glenn. They have spoken eloquently and very articulate. Thank you so much. You saved me a lot of time. I only have 5 minutes. It seems that, it's just a site plan application, but as the two delegates mentioned, this is all originated from this data center. So I'm gonna just give our fellow councilors a little bit of background that and early this year, without notice, Electra erect huge 90-foot power poles, concrete, in front of residents' front door and backyard, and with no regards to the residents, and it is very disrespectful. And with the help of acting mayor, we have a few town halls meeting with the residents. We were able to have some achievement, which is, we cut down the height of the poles. We were able to integrate the street lights with the power poles so that we can decrease the number of poles along Leslie Street. However, the residents, not hundreds, I'm talking about thousands of households, they are very, very upset about this. I gotta reiterate, Richmond Hill really has no jurisdiction on these hydro poles. When we go to the region said there's nothing we can do. I have a meeting with our MPP, Michael Passer, yesterday, and he said he will look into it. But having said that, damage has been done. We were able to halt the constructions for 2 months, but at the end of the day, because they have to supply power to the data center, they said, no, we got to do the constructions now. So all of a sudden, overnight, those poles are erected. This hugely impacted my residents' quality of life. There's no regard with their health and safety, the aesthetic, not to mention about their property values being affected. This is just the first phase. I'm talking about, if you're familiar with the area, is Leslie Street from Major Mac to Princeton. And there's another phase, which is from Princeton all the way to Albion Mills. So by then, there will be another hundreds of thousands of residents being affected by these poles. So I'm here to stand with my residents to find every single way to fight for justice. Nobody wants to hear what they're crying for help. And honestly, I think something should be done. And to my fellow councillors, this could happen anywhere in Richmond Hill in the future. And this could happen in front of your house. And we got to do something about it. And so what I'm trying to do now is I'll try my best ability to fight for my residents. And the motion I have in front of me is the site plan not be approved until such time the applicant, Electra, and York Region, and all other government agencies finds alternate ways to supply power to the data center. I want the poles down. I don't know, you can go underground and go somewhere else, but this is not happening in front of residents' front door. And for the mural, the report came out, the design came out just last week. You heard loud and clear what my residence stands.
1 minute.
But okay, thank you. Good. I'm going to finish up. So A is not to be approved until we solve the power supply problem. B is the design of the mural. The approval of the design of the mural be deferred to allow a public consultation by the local councillor. So I need to go back to my residents and let them take a look at the design, and we'll decide, after I talk to them. But I think the most important thing, this is a chaotic situation. The quality of life of my residents are hugely, hugely impacted. Just imagine, overnight in front of your door, front door, there's a 90-foot pole. Some have 2, I'm telling you. So the residents are crying for help. I'm begging for you, all of my fellow councillors, for your help. We need to do this right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Councillor Liu. I think it's great you're taking a position, and I'll wait for the clerk to just get that motion up. I'm going to go to you next, Regional and Local Councillor Pirelli. Would you be willing to second the motion as described by Councillor Liu, or I guess you want to see it first?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm very happy and proud to be able to second this motion. It is unspeakable to wake up one morning and see a 90-foot pole in front of your house. I mean, who does something like that? It doesn't make any sense. And when we tried to interject, everybody was, including the local councillor, was discarded. We don't care what you think. We're going to do whatever we want. Doesn't make any sense. And so, yes, we have to put them in a position to do the right thing. And the only power we have is to deny this site plan and hopefully they'll come to the table and do the right thing. This power should have been buried underground. I mean, could you imagine on Yonge Street if we had, there was, you know, when they built the property Expressions at Yonge and 16th, before they put all the wires underground and it was paid for through DC charges, one of the builders, the builder who built Expressions, Zancor, they were told that at their cost, they had to put the wires underground on Yonge Street, which makes sense. Why wasn't that done here? I mean, we have to demand accountability. Somebody has to take the reins here and the responsibility for doing something so idiotic, putting 90-foot poles in front of a residential place. And then to speak to, I mean, Councillor Lee, he was very kind when he says that Urbicon's mural they want to consult with. If I'm not mistaken, I don't want to put, you know, words in Mr. Steplock's mouth, but I think what he was saying was, you know, forget about murals, put up some nice trees so we don't have to look at ugly buildings. And that makes a lot of sense to me. You know, there has to be a natural buffer between a residential neighborhood and a commercial neighborhood or an industrial neighborhood. And nobody wants to look out their window and see a big, monstrous building, but a nice row of grown trees. I understand where Mr. Steplock is coming. Everybody's heard this story before on council. When I bought my house, behind me, there was an empty field. And then they built the side of a house 4 feet away from my backyard. And all I was looking at was a brick wall. And what did I do? I immediately went out and bought a bunch of trees, large trees, cost me $15,000 to put up the trees so that I could look at trees and not a brick building. Well, here we have an opportunity to make sure that it is compatible. Our previous delegation was about compatibility in the neighborhood. And this is not compatible in the neighborhood right across the street from residential. So yes, Councillor Liu is going to do his consultation with the neighborhood. I suspect that the result will be no mural and a bunch of trees so we can look at beautiful vegetation as opposed to a big monstrous structure. So based on that, happy and proud to be the seconder on this motion. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Regional Councillor. And I'm not able to see the other members of council to see if anyone else wanted to speak on this. I don't see any other hands. I'll speak to the motion. I'll 100% support this motion. We've got the purpose was to receive the application and for comments to go to staff. So that's our comments. You know, right now it needs to be communicated to this applicant that they've got to address this hydro pole situation. You know, if they want the city of Richmond Hill to continue, you know, processing their site plan. The one thing that we were going to be approving today was the mural. And I agree 100% with the delegation today. I don't see anything that says Richmond Hill about that mural. I don't see anything that says that speaks to the neighborhood or you know, even our local business park. Not sure what's trying to be communicated there, but the current iteration of the mural that's being applied for, I can't support approving that. And I fully and wholeheartedly support Councillor Liu in his motion. I think it's a very good step forward to move this motion at this time in order to send a message to an applicant who has caused a major problem. And what has happened through all of this is we've exposed a major flaw in the Ontario planning process. The fact that Electra, the provision of hydro utilities are not considered in any way by a municipality. We don't approve the erection of hydro poles. We don't permit for them. But there needs to be a mechanism in place. And I think as a result of this, there will be changes at the provincial level, but there needs to be a mechanism where the Ontario Hydroelectric Utility Company, in this case Electra, consults with, engages with the community that they're impacting, especially in a project like this when they're making such a substantial impact. I think there needs to be a mechanism for them to engage the community, for residents to have input, for local councils to have a way and a say in how power is supplied to their municipality. So I'm gonna support the motion on the floor. I'll go to other speakers. Councillor Chan, and then Councillor West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. First of all, let me say that I can feel for the two delegates, and thank you for making the delegation. It certainly is not something that both delegates and the neighbors are happy to see, and I even hear the word angry somewhere. And so I can truly appreciate, not just as a councillor, as a resident of the city, as a local councillor said it well, it could happen anywhere. And it's not just the hydro poles. It could be other utilities, which regrettably, that the municipalities, Richmond Hill and other places, we have no control over the process. The other example I would share is also about those called the cellular tower. Because if a jurisdiction is under the federal level, similar to what the acting mayor just mentioned about for the electricity, it's kind of out of the municipal hands. But having said that, our residents look upon to us as local elected official to really advocate for them, even though we are not really part of that decision making. So because part of the original motion, or not the motion in front of us, part of the recommendation is to offer comments. So I want to put my comments on record. Is A, yes, I'm completely agree that we as a municipality that have to work and advocate to the provincial level, that this kind of provincially regulated utilities have to work with local municipalities to have a public consultation process so that our local elected official and our committee could have a voice before anyone can just, any utility can just drop you a note and then within the next couple of days, something happened and the municipality have no control. And I would like to extend that to other level of government relating to other relating utilities such as telecommunication and so on. So I'm completely 100% in support of this motion, and thank you, Councillor New, for putting this forward. And this is something obviously we have to be very firm, and I hope that at the end, the whole council would be supporting this motion unanimously to send a strong message to all utilities, regardless whether provincially regulated or federally regulated. You cannot overlook, sidestep municipalities and the community just because you don't need our approval. I think that message has to be sent loud and clear. And I think it's also mentioned about what really would be the value of the mural to the community and even to the project itself of the data center. Is, for me, is questionable. So, Mr. Chair, thank you for opportunity for make the comments and show 100% support of this motion. And let it be very clear, all utilities, please take note. We're not going to stay silent. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Chan. I think everyone's weighed in that wanted to on this. I'm going to call the vote. Oh, sorry. Actually, Councillor West and then Councillor Silivets. Councillor West.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. There's been a lot that's been said up to this point. I do understand what the community is going through here. There was something we had similar to this in Ward 4 not too long ago with hydro poles, and you know, it is definitely something that you know, they don't look nice if you're looking out at it. I can certainly understand why the community would be upset with that. And I think actually Councillor Liu put forward a motion that I think is a good stab at trying to figure out this issue and working towards rectifying it. So I salute him. I'll support the motion. As for the mural, I understand the community's concern about that as well. I do. All I want to say about the mural is that if we're going to put up a mural like that, I don't want to micromanage the process. I get that artists don't really like having that process micromanaged, but I think we really need to have the subject matter of that mural something that's more relevant to Richmond Hill, if indeed that ends up being the case. And so I'll just weigh in on that one specific issue, but I will support the motion that's on the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Silvitz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the two residents who stepped forward here. And Kayla, never be afraid. We're here to listen to you, and we're here to do everything we possibly can for you and all the residents of Richmond Hill. I want to thank Councillor Liu for his impassioned discussion, and I completely support him and the residents. I'll be brief. What I'm very surprised at here is that there was no public consultation regarding this mural. When I first saw it attached to our agenda, I just assumed that there had been public consultation, and that is offensive and disrespectful. That cannot happen. This is a major piece, and without any question, it should reference Richmond Hill. It shouldn't have the CN Tower there. It should be referencing Richmond Hill, and it should be acceptable by all the residents who have to look at it all the time. It's one thing to drive past it at 60 kilometers an hour and look at it maybe 2-3 times a year, but this is something completely different. So I really urge the applicant to relook at this and ensure appropriate consultation with the residents. The other thing I wanted to say was this: I am truly surprised that these hydro poles were erected without formal consultation with the residents and the local councillor, and perhaps even the regionals and our acting mayor, because that doesn't make any sense to me. When we have applications in to erect the cell towers, and I had one in Ward 5. I know that Councillor Chan has gone through a number of them at Avenue Road and Carville, and we rejected it outright, and it was pulled. But that for 2 poles that were just single poles that look like light standards that were going to go on Avenue Road close to Carville, we had full public consultation with Rogers Communications and with the entity responsible for putting up this tower and the federal government. So this is just wrong on every level. And I truly hope and trust that with this motion before us today, which I fully support, that we will see something quite different here. Well, I understand it's very expensive to bury hydro lines. As one of our delegates said, put the poles on the other side of Leslie Street where the building is going to be erected. So that's another option completely. But this can't be done, and it needs to be known that Richmond Hill Council will not accept something like this. So thank you for the chance to say my piece.
Thank you, Councillor Silvitz. Okay, Councillor Liu, you want to wrap up?
Yes, please. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to all my fellow councillors on behalf of my residents. This is very encouraging. I think council as a whole, we keep advocating, and hopefully it's not just lip service. Hopefully we can actually get something done. So my residents, it depends on us, even though it's not our jurisdiction, but I'm sure council as a whole, we can do it. So thank you once again for the opportunity to present this. And, by no means, no intention at all to delay or jeopardize this project. But somehow the residents' quality of life have been hugely impacted. And I don't want to see that happen. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Liu. I'm going to put it to a vote now. Councillor Pirelli's ready. Everyone's ready. Okay. And you want a recorded vote on it? Very good. The clerk will call out the roll call on Councillor Liu's motion, which was seconded by Regional and Local Councillor Pirelli.
Thank you. Through you, Acting Mayor, voting on the motion.
Councillor Liu?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. For those council colleagues, I think, who are attending this meeting at home, I haven't had a chance to actually read the motion. So even though I trust our staff, but
thank you for that, Councillor.
Yeah, if you don't mind, can you just read it out, please?
No, it's important for everyone to see it. Yeah. It's going to be on the screen here. For those councillors at home, can everyone see it?
No.
Could you read it?
Yes, okay.
Could the clerk read it?
Could the clerk read it
I'll have the
out?
clerk read it
Yeah.
before he calls out the roll call for the recorded vote. Okay.
Thank you. Through you, Acting Mayor. That City File D06-19010 not be approved until such time that Electra, York Region, and other entities find other ways for power to be supplied to the power center, and B, the approval of the design of the mural be deferred to allow a public meeting to be held by the local ward councillor.
Okay.
Is that acceptable, Councillor Liu?
Yes, and I don't see the applicant in the motion. I only see the York Region and
Electra, York Region, and
Electra, York Region.
the applicant and other entities.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Is that what you want? Yeah. Okay.
Yep. Perfect.
York Region, comma, the applicant and other entities. Okay, there it is. Go ahead, Mr. Clerk, with the roll call.
Thank you very much. Councillor Liu.
Yes.
Regional and Local Councillor Pirelli.
Yes.
Councillor Barros. Councillor Chan.
Yes.
Councillor West.
Yes.
Councillor Munch.
Yes.
Councillor Silovitz.
Yes.
Acting Mayor DePaula.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, there we go. A unanimous vote on that one. Thank you, members of council. Now, if no one objects, I'd like to call a recess until 1:30. I think that'll be enough time. Okay, Councillor Chan is good with that. Councillor Silovitz, so no objections. I'm just gonna declare this council meeting in recess from now until 1:30. At 1:30, we will reconvene. Members of the public, you can probably stay on this channel, but the meeting will resume at 1:30 p.m. Thank you.